Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Backlog Breakdown. I'm one of your hosts, Nate, and this is a video game podcast where we seek to encourage and equip the church to engage the genre, the medium of video games wisely and well. Again, I'm one of your hosts, Nate, joined as always by my friend, brother in Christ, Joshua.
Hey, man.
That's you. Yeah.
Hello.
Wait,
that is me.
That
I'm
is
here.
you. Yeah, we've
recording a podcast.
We are recording a podcast. We are also joined tonight by our friend, a special guest, one of our patrons, SPyKe the Groundbreaker, A.K.A. the other Nate.
Wait, what is that? What do you hear that? What is that?
SPyKe the legend grows in the ring where the spotlight glows. Every slam shakes the earth below. SPyKe the Groundbreaker stealing the show.
I love that harmonica electric guitar.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome there.
Like that sick.
Yeah, that was for those who aren't watching. I was singing that live.
Breaking the ground.
Breaking the ground while I
exactly.
Did it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I do.
There's some holes in that story, Nate. I mean,
holes in the story
and the ground apparently. Yeah,
of course.
But yeah, we're glad to have you here tonight, buddy. Folks, tonight is going to be a game oriented episode. We're going to be talking about the Talos Principle. But before we get into that, Nate, it has been a hot minute since you've been on the show with us. So why don't you tell us how it's been? Josh.
Oh, no.
You're slacking. What? Oh, no.
It's been.
Oh, no.
Oh, there it is. That's how it's been.
Yeah, how it's been with you and yours since we last spoke.
Oh, man. I'm trying to remember the last time I was on. I've been a dad for over a year now. We just celebrated my daughter's 1 year birthday, not anniversary. Gosh, it's way too early for that. 1 year birthday last weekend. And so that was a lot of fun. She's awesome. A lot of fun. So, once again, I think like my last time I was on here that had to do with her, my news, it's hard to top that, right? I mean, 1 year birthday. So yeah, that's been the main thing recently. Yeah.
Nice. Well, congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah, you have not dipped your toes back into semi-professional wrestling or amateur wrestling.
No, I have not. I have not done that in over a decade, and mainly because my back. If I even think about it, my back's like, no, you're not doing that. There's no way. Yeah. It's more like SPyKe the backbreaker, something. Yeah, my back. It hates me. I'm sure it's between that and high school football. It's terrible, but yeah.
SPyKe the backacre.
There you go. That's what I was going for.
Yeah.
That was a good pun there.
No, that was not a pun. You stop. Do not slander me. Do not, sir. Do not. But so everybody's healthy and happy over there, you know.
Yeah. Recently, I mentioned it in the Discord. My dad was in the hospital for about almost a week. He had some internal issues, hernia issues, things like that. He's finally home. Thankfully, I didn't get the update out there on Discord, but he's home. He's recovering. Same time that happened, my mom had a scheduled surgery. She tore her ACL, and so she was having surgery at the same time. So both of them were, recovering from health issues. So it was a little bit of a rough patch there. All of this was going on while we were having my daughter's birthday. So it was like, oh man, trying to juggle all this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it turned out all right. Both mom and dad are back home and recovering. And so they're doing good.
Good.
Nice.
Joshua, how has it
Yes,
been
sir.
since we last spoke, sir?
Oh man. Well, kind of the first thing on my mind, it goes along with that, along with hospital visits and health issues and stuff like that. So my oldest daughter, I suppose, the second of three kids, she woke up earlier this week and had a seizure when she woke up, and that was not something that we've experienced before. So, anyways, long story short, she recovered just fine. It was just a weird experience. It was like snowing pretty heavily the entire day. And so we didn't want to take her to the hospital that day. I didn't actually consider it to be an immediate emergency because she bounced back. Um, uh, and anyway, so we took her to the hospital the next day. The doctor confirmed, like, yeah, she's fully recovered. Like, there's nothing wrong. It didn't affect anything. And it was probably a good idea that we didn't try and drive. Because, I mean, the children's hospital that we took her to is probably 25, 30 minutes away. It's in the main town in Des Moines. And so, like, trying to drive that while it was, I mean, we got 8.5 inches over the course of the day of snow. So, just instead of trying to drive in that. Anyways, yeah, so she's fine. It was just a very odd experience. The doctors told us that apparently they expect everyone to have a seizure in their lifetime, or like one is fine. And they don't consider that abnormal. It's only if it happens again that they start considering that there could be some underlying issues. So that was, like, honestly, that was reassuring. It's like, okay, this isn't an issue now. Although I will say, like, since then, I'm kind of just kind of waiting. Like, okay, is it it happened once? Could it happen again? Kind of a thing. So, I wouldn't say I'm anxious, but I am kind of just trying to think long term. Like, okay, if this were to, and like, all things considered, she felt it coming on. It was okay. Like, it wasn't as bad as it could have been. It was just weird, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. That's what we're praying for, but we'll see. If it does, then we'll deal with it and we'll figure out what to do from there. But anyways, that was just a very strange thing that happened since we talked last.
Yeah, it's
So-
probably a little.
That's got to be scary.
Yeah.
It was I've never been in the room when another person has been seizing up, but I had a dog growing up that was epileptic, so I'm pretty familiar with what seizures look like, and also that you can't really do anything. You just kind of, like, try and stay calm, try and have I mean, a dog is different than a person, but when it's my daughter, it's like, just keep talking to her, try to get her to stay calm, because she doesn't know what's going on. Like, her body's just not working. So anyways, yeah, yes, it was scary, but it's also like, I'm the dad in the room and I am going to stay calm, and I'm going to be the rock that she can kind of, like, smack up against and hold on to, while something's going on that's freaking her out. So it wasn't, it was much more long-term thinking. It wasn't really, I don't know. It was weird because I didn't consider it like an immediate emergency. Oh no, we need to get this checked out right now. It's just like, okay, is she doing better? Okay, cool. Then let's think through, what our next steps are. So yeah, it's odd is all I'm going to say. But yeah. That's but we're doing good. We got some reassurance from the doctors, and nothing, like, it has not affected her at all. She was tired the rest of the day, and she was a little sore in her neck. But other than that, no residual effects. She's been fine for the past week. So what was that?
Was it a whole body seizure? Like, there's, like, everything seized
It was.
up? Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she felt it coming on. So when I went up to go check on her, like, it had already started, but she was able to communicate, not in full sentences, but in words. And eventually she wasn't able to, and then she was again. Yeah. So, yeah.
I remember couple Christmases ago, my nephew Deuce's son Declan he was running a fever, and he seized while we were there, and that was
Wow.
terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out he has like febrile seizures, where it's like basically
Okay.
he runs
Yep.
a fever and his body just is like, oh hey, let's have a seizure. So
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
spooky. I don't know that he's had anything like that since then, but yeah. So yeah, I just remember watching his little body just kind of like, you know, like it's really.
Yeah.
And then like, and when and he would just like just, I think he stopped breathing for
It would
like,
come on really suddenly.
yeah, and he stopped breathing
Yeah.
at one point in time, and it was like
Oh
really,
goodness. Okay.
it was really scary. But yeah,
Hmm.
they
Man, oh man.
yeah. And that's yeah.
Yeah, you can't help if you're a dad. You know, I'm speaking
Mhm.
from the least amount of experience here, but you know, you hear a story like that, you can't help but kind of take a little bit of that and put yourself in that position. And it, even more so, like I always forget until you say it, that our daughters kind of have the same name. It's spelled the same, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
But I saw you post that, and I don't know. It's just that is a scary thought to have. But
Mhm.
glad to hear that. You know, it seems like she's recovering well. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's good news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she took it like a champ. You know, she was a little freaked out, but she's doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
I think I've been more, just listening for when she wakes up in the mornings since then. Like I've been a little more not on edge, but a little more attentive, where she's just like, yeah, no, it's fine. So,
Good.
but yeah,
Good.
but
Well,
that's how we've been.
yeah.
We're doing good. It's just
Yeah.
weird.
That's just yeah,
But
I mean, like this has kind of been an oddly heavy um I mean, Spike starts us off
Mhm.
with birthdays and birthday cake, and then and of course he's like, yeah, my parents had some medical stuff, and then you bring it down, and I'm about to like just like
It's true.
gutterball this thing. Um Byron had flu type A, and
Mm.
that was, I don't know if you guys know anything about this, but it's
Mm-mm.
kind of making the rounds right now, at least out here.
Okay.
It and normally you get the flu and it's like at most a week, like, and but
Right.
it's like it really
Right.
like like just kicks you for like 3-4 days, right? And then like you kind of just like you're a little tired, a little worn out, but then you get better. He was basically running a temp for 10 days, like a fever.
Ugh,
Um, and like
man.
we would treat it with Motrin and he'd have like a little relief.
Okay.
But then as soon as the Motrin would wear off, and like in that pocket, he was like, yeah, cool. Like, let's hang. Um, it
Hmm.
was really rough for a couple of days because like, he wasn't really like he would drink, but he wasn't really eating and stuff. But the other day, yesterday, his fever finally broke. And
Okay.
like, but we kept him home today, and then tomorrow we'll be home. So, but it's just been like Megan had to take a few days off work, I had to take a few days off work, and it's just been like we stayed home from church, and it's just like, yeah, it sucks. But
Yeah.
and it
Mm.
just, but it was like a week and a half like of just like,
Hmm.
yeah, my kid's sick, and yeah, so yay flu. um, yeah.
Yeah,
Super fun.
that's been pretty big around here. A lot of people are catching it. We thought that our daughter might have had it last week. She
Oh.
had she was running a fever, and we were worried about it. But and she usually runs a fever when she starts teething, but this particular time it was a little more intense. Well, come to
Okay.
find out, a few days after that, she breaks 3 teeth through, and
Oh gosh. Yeah.
yeah, and she was fine after that day. It was just, I guess it was just a really bad teething episode, but
Mm.
thankfully we dodged that. But I'm glad to hear your guys doing a little
Yeah.
better. I saw you posting stuff about that, and that sounded rough.
Yeah, it was like low key kind of scary because like the flu is for kids. I mean, the flu is like we're just like it's the flu, but like we forget a whole bunch of people die from that every year. Um,
Mhm.
so that was a little spooky, but it was never like it was more odd than anything though because it was just like
Okay.
it just wouldn't go away. And then
Mhm.
Tylenol, but like, Tylenol did nothing. Nothing. Like,
Mm.
like, did it might have dropped like, he would run up to like 103. And then I'd get real nervous
Oof.
then. Um,
Yeah.
but like, you give him some Tylenol and it dropped like 0.5. And it's like, okay,
Oh.
so it's
That's
like,
frustrating.
it's a degree, and it's like so it's like you're giving this to him to help him, and it's not doing anything. It's not like giving him any relief. So we just started switching over to Motrin, and we were alternating for a while, and then just it was like Motrin's the only thing that's working, and it's like you can give we basically we shortened the window, and then we would just kept pushing that window out and out, like as far as we could. Um, and when when the Motrin was in the system, he was fine. Like, not fine, but he was like, he wanted to play, he wanted to eat, he wanted to like kind
Yeah.
of like, but as soon as like the Motrin wore off, he was just like, somebody needs to be holding me. Yeah, the world is
Mhm.
ending and everything is awful. Lots of tears, and it's like a sick toddler is kind of the worst thing on the face of the planet,
Yeah.
um, because they don't really have the words, the vocabulary to describe what's going on. It's
Right.
just they're unhappy, and by proxy,
Mhm.
everyone else must be unhappy. Um, so but we're just glad to kind of be through it. Like, again, it was just like more surreal than anything
Right.
else because it was just like it just kept going, and there's like a part where it's like, again, you expect like a flu to last like 3, 4, maybe 5 days, right? And it's like we're like 8 days into this thing, and it's like his fever isn't going anywhere. This is
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, he came out the other side, like, and he's fine. He's been eating pretty good for a few days now, and it was just
Well,
like
good.
yesterday was the first day in like a while that he hasn't had any Motrin. Um, so, but yeah, it was just like it was a little spooky. I'm like, you don't want to give it like I don't know. It's just like it made me mad that the children's Tylenol didn't work. I was like, man, because
Yeah.
like Motrin's kind of like rough on the stomach a little bit. But
Sure.
anyways, yeah, he's good. He's good. Now we're kind of like worn out at that point in time because it's like I was talking to a buddy at work the other day, and I just said like when you're staying home, like it's not like it's when you're home with a sick kid, it is not like just having a day off. It is
Right.
it is just an exercise, like it is just sort of an exercise in like see like exhaustion. And
Mhm.
so we're just kind of we're a little run down, a little worn out, but yeah, we're doing okay. We're just kind of yeah, we're probably going to be in recovery mode for a few days at least, but
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's on the upswing now, at least it seems that way. So yeah,
Nice.
it's a little bit of a relief, but we obviously we like to talk about video games. We're going to be talking about some video games here in a little bit. We're going to be talking about a video game in
Mhm.
particular. We also just are general fans of most entertainment in most entertainment mediums. We like music, we like books, we like movies and television. And so, Josh, I just want to know, like, well, actually,
Mhm.
Nate, since Nate's with us and he's our guest, Nate.
Well, I think what you were saying, actually, as you were asking that question, is that we are a podcast that sometimes likes to report on some media.
Grab your headphones and turn up the sound. We're here to tell you what's
That
going down.
yeah.
Two podcast hosts with attitude and style.
So yeah, we've watched movies, we've been shows, and we gotta let you know. We read a book. We gotta let you know the top 3 hits. Well, in this case, the top 2 hits of the week thus far. Spike, what have you got to bring to the table?
Yeah, first off, I gotta say this feels like it's like backlog
Yeah,
breakdown
I like it.
the musical so far
Awesome.
with all these
Like, is that the
awesome
word you
songs.
really want to
Anyways,
use?
as far as
Uh, mm,
I want to say, it was groundbreaking music,
Hmm.
and it was pretty great.
Didn't like it.
As for my media, I haven't had a whole lot. I'm currently reading through the Haunted Cosmos book. I'm kind of taking like little chunks out of it. I got to the point where I think it's the 9th chapter where I say it's both. They're talking about the kind of the hierarchy of
angelic beings. Yep.
Elohim, angels and things like that. Right. And, it's a little dense. So when I read books, I tend to usually have the Notion app up at the same time. Because if I don't take notes, I'm probably going to forget half of what I read anyway. So I always like to kind of, pick out the most noteworthy things and kind of throw it into my notes app. Well, I started doing that in this chapter, and it's like, dude, I'm basically rewriting this chapter. And, so I'm taking it in chunks. I'm mostly done with that chapter, but it's interesting so far. I do like it because, so I have Michael Heiser's Unseen Realm.
I'm
book,
still
right?
working.
And I think
still
there's been
through
discussion about
Heiser's
that.
Unseen Realm.
Was maybe in the Discord or even on the right. And I completely understand. Right? It's really dense. It's more textbooky, and I still intend totally to go back through and read through that. But you have to kind of be in a certain season to be able to kind of tackle that sort of thing. But I enjoy that sort of thing. The topic itself, but what I like about this Haunted Cosmos book is that it's not just, hey, here's some information. It's here's some information. Now here's what we can do in light of it, right? So it's like the best part about it, right, was there's a an earlier chapter where he's just talking about, hey, before we tackle these supernatural things, let's just have some appreciation for what's apparent to us in creation, and I like that they take that route. I hope it continues to do that throughout the entire book, because it's one thing to just throw the information out to you. It's another thing to have that little bit extra there. I think that's kind of the difference between like a textbook and a book like this. Is like textbook, it's just the data, right? This is, it's got the information, but it's also got a, now what? And so hopefully that keeps up. Aside from that, my wife and I have been going back through. Well, going back through the TV show Lost. I've already seen it. I saw it like over a decade ago, and it's funny because I think you guys were mentioning the show the other day, Lost, or on. I can't remember what the discussion was, but it's interesting watching a show like this the second time through, where you've already kind of seen the end from the beginning. But it's also kind of because, well, like I said, my wife hasn't seen it, so going back through and kind of seeing, seeing it through that lens of what it might seem like to somebody who hasn't seen it, knowing what all I know about the show. So, but it's pretty interesting so far. We're only about almost 2 seasons through, and it's interesting. It's a little intense sometimes, more than I remember, but it's entertaining.
It's one of those shows where, like,
that's about it.
I bring it up every once in a while as a point of comparison to. It is this sort of like the best example of a program or a story that it doesn't really feel like the directors or the screenwriters know where they're going with it. Um, and it, like, for lack of a better term, it just felt a little lost.
Mm,
I hate
mm.
that.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Delicious.
let's not talk
Hey, that
about
was
that.
another great pun, man.
No, but
Let me pull my Notion
I
app
think,
up and
to
start
just
writing
to
some
kind
of
of
these
like riff
down.
on it, and I haven't started. I actually got my copy of Haunted Cosmos not too long ago.
Nice.
But what I will say is that I think, and I've kind of stressed this and reiterated this several times, but like the enchanted worldview stuff, it's like it's really easy and fun to get like caught up in the high strange and the more sensationalist kind of stuff, where it's like the
Hmm.
supernatural and sort of like the spookums and all that stuff, and I love that stuff, don't get me wrong. But I think like the more important part is that the enchanted worldview is, one of the things it seeks to do is really sort of invite people back into wonder,
Hmm.
to sort of marvel at the sort of the mystery of creation. Like, there's so many things, and what's kind of fun, and we can probably even talk a little bit about this like when we get into the topic too, is because like materialism is really kind of, it's literally soulless, and that it pulls the soul out of everything, right? um but it kind of boils everything down to like it's just mechanical values, right?
Hmm.
And what's so fascinating about the enchanted worldview is, sort of as I've spent time sort of like hanging out in those spaces and thinking through it, is that it really does, like, it's not, again, the high strange and the supernatural and the spooky, like all that's like, that's fun, and it's kind of like that's like the fun rabbit hole stuff to go down. But at the end of the day, like, it really is an interesting sort of like arena of thought to sort of help you recapture just like how big and crazy God is, and how magnificent, like,
Hmm.
and like all of the mystery that he's packed into all of life, and
Yeah.
all of the glory that is just like sort of waiting there to be revealed and examined and kind of wrestled with. So yeah, yeah, cool. I'm glad you're reading that. And like, yeah, Unseen Realm is like heavy and it's dense and it's very scholarly. Um, so it's like, yeah, that's one that is, it's taken me a good bit to, I start and I stop on that uh a
Hmm.
fair bit. So but you're all right there,
Yep.
Nate. We lost your visuals. Okay. Okay. Just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
hey,
I'm
it's
here.
just wanted to make sure everything was okay. So
Sorry.
um Joshua, you,
Yes,
um,
sir.
you, sir,
Yeah.
what
Media.
have you been into lately? Non-video game
Yeah.
related.
Yeah. Right, non-video game. So my two things. One is actually a few weeks ago, my wife and I sat down. We were done with Parks and Rec, and we wanted to watch something. And I had mentioned, I think we were flipping through Amazon Prime or something like that, and there was a movie that I had not seen in years. And I mentioned, oh yeah, I remember that one. That one was really good. And my wife said that she hadn't seen it, which I could have sworn that she had. But anyways, I was like, we own it on DVD. Let me pull it out and we watch it. Anyways, it is a movie called Hero. It's starring Jet Li. I know there
Yeah.
was another one that came out around the same time called Hero, but anyways, this one's starring Jet Li. It's along the same lines as like a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Actually,
Hmm.
the main actress is in this movie. She plays more of a minor role in this movie, but it was really good. In fact, I think it was actually better than I remembered it being. It is really cool the way that the story is told because it is it focuses around a single point in time, but it tells the story from like three different perspectives. And it's visually really cool. Again, like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. It's
That's
got what's that?
that's the one where like he's recounting a story to like some
Yes.
sort of, yes. Okay.
Yeah, to the
Yeah.
emperor. Uh-huh. And then
Yeah.
the emperor's like, I don't think that's how it happened. This is what I think happened. then you get the final. So yeah, he tells his story. The king tells him the other story, and then you get actually what really happened,
Yeah.
and then it comes to a head at the very end. And
Yeah.
visually, it shows itself differently because the characters are dressed in different colors, and so the scenes have these different. It's visually done really well. It's all in Chinese, so it's
Hmm.
subtitled. Anyways, it was a really good movie. I really appreciated it. It is one that maybe you could come to the end of it and be like, okay, but what was the point? Um, I think there is a point to it, but it's not what you might. It might not be the most satisfying thing for everyone to watch,
Well,
but I really enjoyed it
yeah, and
as
I
a.
remember really liking that one a
Mhm,
lot. There's another, like, if you like the visual sort of like flair
mhm,
that Hero has, I don't know if it's if some of like like the direction, the I don't know if the director is the same or if it's some of the same visual, like maybe some of the photography or whatever. Um,
sure.
or set design, but House of Flying Daggers has some really,
Okay. Okay.
really great like set design stuff like that too. But yeah,
Nice.
Hero, I
Nice.
remember really liking that. That is a good one. Yeah,
Yeah, and oh my gosh, I can't think of his name, but the guy who does the Ip Man movies, and he was in the fourth.
Donnie Yen.
Uh, yes, Donnie Yen. Yeah, he plays a small role
Hmm.
in it as
He's a
well, which is
yeah,
pretty cool. I didn't remember that part. I just remember Jet Li. So, anyways,
yeah,
very good movie. I would
yeah.
highly recommend it. It was, yeah, I think it was actually better than what I remembered. So, I really enjoyed it.
That's kind of
The
cool.
second thing, yeah, yeah, and I mean, I have it on DVD, so I don't know if it's stream. I'm sure it's streaming somewhere, but we didn't even look for streaming stuff because we own it on DVD. The second thing that I would recommend is another one of these bands that popped up into my mind that I started listening to that came from, friend of the show, Micah. He was on the Brain Trust episode when he had asked me, what are some underrated bands that you used to listen to that you think should have gotten bigger. And I don't know where this one came from. I think maybe I got a tune stuck in my head or something. It just popped into my head, but I was searching for it. I was like, what is the name of this? So go searching for it and listening to the albums, and I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are really good. It's a band called Pompeii. Pompeii was from Austin, Texas. I didn't know it at the time. I had never seen them live or anything like that. But they are very good. There is an album, goodness, I can't even think of it off the top of my head, but they th-
If you just close your eyes, you can probably think about it
yeah,
and
that's right,
figure out
maybe,
the name of
but
the band or the name of the album.
yeah, it's almost like nothing's there at
If
all.
you just close your
Um,
eyes.
I see what you're doing, and that is the song. If you search for Pompeii, that is certainly what is going to pop up, in whatever music service that you're looking for. No, there's the record is called Nothing Happens for a Reason. That one in particular, I remember it really well. I think it's really good. It's kind of what I told Micah was it's kind of like Clarity era Jimmy Eat World. That kind of like
Mm,
jangly kind of emo sound. They have a cellist in the band, so you got some strings in there. The more I listen to it, the more it's kind of like veering into. It reminds me of like Copeland, if you know Copeland,
hmm.
kind of like that, in that area. Anyways, I really like it, and so I recommend it if you can find it, and if it's not just bogged down by, um, yeah, by that song that's really popular. But I'm going to be an optimist about this and think that you can actually find it if you go searching for it. So
Uh, just to sort of double back, Hero is available on Amazon
That's good.
Prime. I just looked it.
nice.
It's you can rent it, the HD version for $4, or right now as we are recording, it's $5 for the
Ooh,
HD version to
oh, I
buy.
might even pick that up because that'd be
Yeah,
cool. It is
yeah,
visually very good.
it's a yeah that is a really striking film. Yeah.
Nice.
So I did.
So how
What was
about you, Nate? What's
Well,
that?
I wanted to ask you a question. When we had Jordan
Yep.
on a couple weeks ago,
Mhm.
there was an anime that you guys, the the
Whisper of the Heart
Whispers of the
is the
Heart,
name.
yeah,
Whisper
or
of the Heart. Yes.
yeah, I ended up watching that, and it was really cute.
You did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I did. I really did like that. So
Hmm.
that was I was like, anytime I have a Hayao Miyazaki hole, I like
Hmm.
to address that. He's probably he's probably my favorite animator, like, or well,
Okay.
just anything Ghibli does, I love, but
Right.
I love his direction most of the time. So I did go watch that, and it was really cute. Now it kind of makes me want to go watch Return of the Cat. Um, just
Okay.
even
Yeah.
I know it's yeah,
It's very
I,
different.
it's very
But
different,
yes.
but I kind of want to go back and watch it, but I haven't done that yet. I haven't been watching too much. Like I mean, I watched
Hmm.
that, and that was really cute, but I've been sort of reading a lot lately and
Hmm.
listening to audiobooks. And so I started listening to the series that it was on, the Saga of the Forgotten Hero stuff. Um,
Hmm.
the books are out, but not all of them are an audiobook. So I just bought the Kindle versions and just finished the series, and I really like it.
Okay.
It's like
Nice. Nice.
okay, and so it's like it's kind of like dark fantasy. It's
Hmm.
kind of like it's tropey. It's not going to blow your mind, but I think it's fairly well written.
Hmm.
Um, like Korea has kind of a grim, dark, noir kind
Okay.
of shtick that and I appreciate that, right?
Hmm.
And it comes out a little bit even in these books, um, but I I I don't know. There are a lot of things I really liked. I liked the kind of the Eastern Asiatic set piece where it was, a lot of like fantasy that we get now is kind of written in like, sort of a Western medieval kind of like knights and kings and European
Right.
kind, and it's like they dipped into again a more Eastern. So it's like a lot of it, like, Indian and kind of like a lot of the Asiatic influences. So it's like there might have been some Japanese kind of like leanings, but and like that's even the thing is like sometimes you'll read like fantasy or science fiction and like heavy Asian kind of references where it's like Chinese and Japanese and Korean, but there's like that central or like Western Asian kind of influence where it's again it's like, or the African, Northeast African kind of like where it's like you have maybe a more of a Middle Eastern flavor, or like, and it was interesting and it was different. And I don't see a lot of fiction, and it's not like I don't read super prolifically, but it's like I don't see a lot of fantasy that's written from that perspective. And it was kind of interesting. I liked it a lot. I think the characters were pretty interesting, and he told a pretty good story, and he knew how to end it. Like, that's what I'm saying is like the ending's a little like trite might not be the right word. It's a little tropey and kind of like like whatever. And
Okay.
but it does like a good enough job too where it doesn't um it's an interesting world. It's an interesting series of books. um and I like them. So the Saga of the Forgotten Hero books by Larry Correa, there's 6 of them. um I listened to the first 3, and I ended up reading the last 3. um and
Okay.
I ripped through them on my Kindle, and that was the first time I'd
Yeah.
done like any like reading. Most of the time I just listen to stuff anymore. And so it was like, oh, like I actually do enjoy reading. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, they're good.
Nice.
I like them. They're different. I think he's got an interesting voice. So yeah. I would recommend checking those out. The other thing that I've been listening to that I kind of want to just throw out there is Jason Schreier is probably one of the last great like games journalists, and I don't say that in like I think he's personally great, because actually I think his politics kind of suck, and he seems
Mhm.
like kind of like a, I don't know if I would like him as a human being. I don't know. I've never met him, but I just like he just kind of, but he does do really great like journalistic work, and like
Okay.
he's an investigative journalist, and like
Okay.
he definitely has an agenda, but he knows how to like go down rabbit holes and ask good questions. But he's written a couple books. I'm
Mhm.
pretty sure he wrote Blood, Sweat, and Pixels,
Right.
um, which that you know is absolutely fascinating. But he wrote another one about Activision Blizzard,
Mm.
and I guess it's
Okay.
Activision Blizzard King, but sort of like the rise and fall. It's really about Blizzard, and sort of like their sort of like rise and fall, and it's really
Okay.
pretty fascinating. It's kind of just, it's been interesting because he just like he canvases a whole bunch of different people who worked for Blizzard, or and yeah, it's really interesting to sort of, that's one of my favorite studios, or used to be. I made no bones about the fact that I love Diablo.
Mhm.
I like one of the first PC games I remember really sort of like going down the rabbit hole hard. Like aside from Diablo was Warcraft 2. Um so like I never got into StarCraft. StarCraft was like a little too something for me. But I loved Warcraft, and I've just always kind of been a big fan of what Blizzard does as far as like their creative output. And so it's been kind of interesting to sort of like go down that rabbit hole, and just kind of get a little bit of a peek behind the door, so to speak. So
Mhm.
it's a good, but it's called Play Nice, um,
Okay.
and it's good. Like it's interesting. Like, and I think, and I guess I would just say like for people who are really interested in the industry, like I think books like this, I think Blood, Sweat, and Pixels, I think stuff like this, I think Masters of Doom, I forget who wrote that, but like there is a sort of a growing collection of like video game dev studio history out there that people are putting together, and it's, some of it's really fascinating.
Hmm.
I'm actually, the part where I'm at right now in Play Nice, they're looking at Hearthstone, which Ben Brode
Okay.
is one of the creative leads, was one of the creative leads on Hearthstone, but he's also the guy who's primarily responsible for Marvel Snap. Um,
Gotcha.
so it's kind of, it's like, oh, like, hey, and it's like, yeah, I forgot that. Frankly, I never played Hearthstone, so that was like, no, I did play it one time, and then I was like, yeah, this is bad for me. I shouldn't do this. And then a few years later he releases Snap, and I'm like, no, I love it. It's my favorite thing ever. As it slowly like eats my soul. Um, but yeah, so the again the Saga of the Forgotten Hero books by Larry Correa, um, they're all pretty excellent. And what's nice about it is that they're all written at this point in time. Like, sometimes like the Red Rising books that I was talking about a few months ago, they're not done with those.
Mhm.
And that kind of makes me crazy. But the Saga of the Forgotten Hero stuff is done. Um, and yeah, that book six's dedication is awesome. It's a super sick burn to George R. R.
Mhm.
Martin,
Yeah.
and he actually makes no bones. It literally on the Kindle version it says, to George R. R. Martin. See, George, it's not that hard. And I was just like, oh, like I thought that was really
Mhm.
funny. Um, but yeah, and then Play Nice by Jason Schreier. I think it's an interesting read. If you have any, be forewarned, it's not like he's not slapping people in the face with it, but he does have a very like pro unionization bent. And so
Okay.
sometimes there's stuff that where it's like up, there it is. There it is. You didn't have to say that, but you wanted to kind of like jam that thing in there. And it's
Sure.
but like, but yeah. So yeah, uh, yeah. Those are a couple books well, a series and then a book that I've been into that are pretty interesting. Yeah, so, but
Nice.
that is really, and really, that's the extent of what I've been into. Like, no music, no movies. I'm just I'm wanting to read lately, so that's what I've been doing.
Mhm.
So, but
Nice.
we are a video game podcast, and we're going to be talking about Talos Principle later. As I have stated several times at this point. But Spike, I would like to know what you've been playing lately. So, what have you been into that is actual video game stuff?
Mhm.
Yeah, so there's a guy
Okay.
by the name of Daniel Mullins who makes some games. He's most notably known for making the Inscription game, but he started with a game
Ah.
about 10 years ago called Pony Island. And if you haven't played it, I've got a few thoughts on it. I won't go into too much detail with that. It does some really interesting things, just thinking outside the box kind of things. And then there was a sequel. Well, not really. It's more like a spiritual successor to that, called The Hex, which um, it starts. I don't even know how to describe it without ruining a whole lot of it. Um, it takes some of those out of the box ideas that Pony
Okay.
Island had and ramps it up to like a lot. Um, it's the general premise is you're at it takes place in this kind of saloon uh, setting, and there's this guy, and he's behind this bar, and there's six patrons staying at this hotel, whatever you want to call it. And he gets a phone call, finds out that there's a murder being planned, and it's one of these six people at this bar, and
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
kind of cheap 2D graphics, nothing fancy. But the story takes place by going through each character's kind of story a little bit, and you take control of each of the characters while you're doing that. So, um, the first
Mhm.
being a character called Super Weasel Kid, and the kind of hook to this is he's from a video game, and you get to see some of his video game and play through it a little bit, and then you go to the next character, and they're all from these different genres. So it's really really cool from a just like a I don't know like I said, thinking outside the box with game design, and it does some really really crazy out there um,
Okay.
kind of tricks towards the end, and
Nice.
the big secrets at the end. It's pretty great. But again, I've probably already said too much about it for the sake of keeping some of those spoilers down. I won't say too much more. But finished that, and then went right into
Mhm.
Inscription because I enjoyed those other two games so much, and
Gotcha.
that's another one you just can't say a whole lot about. So I'm a good ways through that, almost finished that, I think. But if you've played that game, uh, you don't know. So um, yeah, aside from those games, the Daniel Mullins games, I
Yeah.
have been playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I will say that the critiques that are made about the character
Mhm.
design have been said ad nauseum. I won't say a whole lot more about that. It's justified for sure. It's a fair critique, um, which is a shame because you know it
Mhm.
it did something that I wasn't expecting as far as like the combat goes. Because like for the first, I want to say it's like the first 30 hours, like in the very beginning, it gives you all these
No, they're
tutorials
not.
that, even in hindsight, they weren't good
Mhm.
tutorials. Like they don't explain things very well. Um, but going online and kind of seeing other people say, no, this is actually how it works. And everybody in the comments is like,
Right.
yeah, Nintendo should have hired this guy to do the tutorials for the game. But, following some of those and then building your setup to just the right spot to where I was like I said, a good 25, 30 hours in to where I'm finally hitting these combos, right? And when you finally hit them off for the first time, it's like, oh man, this clicks. Like it's the game itself isn't turn-based combat, but once it hits that style of play to where it's okay, I got to think about what element I'm using and then pairing that with another element to make sure that I hit this particular combo, and then doing it in a way that I can constantly get these multipliers, and you see those numbers go up, and the dopamine hit of seeing just these skyrocketed numbers, and then by doing that also getting the added bonus of like your XP just skyrockets as well. It's rewarding you for, hey, I actually actually dug in and understand what's going on here, and it's like the game's way of saying, hey, good job for doing that. Here's your reward, and you just, man, it's so good. Once everything's firing on all cylinders, it takes a long time to get to that point.
Yep.
And once it's doing it, it's really doing it. So, aside from that, I am playing. Or not playing. It depends on your definition.
Okay.
A game called Rusty's Retirement. I heard about this game because I'm on GG, and I think by default you follow Charles Watson. I might be mistaken on that. I'm not sure. But he had this category or this list of games. It was like games that you can play at the bottom of your screen or something like that. And so basically what it is I mean, it's more or less an idle game without microtransactions. You get this little robot, and he takes up a small portion of your screen, and while you can set up certain things, kind of like a farming simulator, and then you just kind of set the automation off. The more you unlock, you get more automation, which causes more money to come in. It's just a kind of a mindless idle game, but it's when you're working, it's kind of nice to have this over off to the side. You check on it every once in a while. It's like, oh yeah, he's looks like we're growing corn today. It's but it's like, that's why I say it's like that's what I'm playing, or rather not playing, because it's kind of an idle game. It's not really it's not a whole lot to it, but it's fun to watch. So
that's funny.
it's like an aquarium.
I just Googled that, and it's like $7 on Steam. And it looks,
But yeah,
it looks interesting.
I wouldn't, this isn't me saying, hey, go out and play this. It'll change your life.
It's funny. When you said Rusty's Retirement,
fun
I
to
was
watch.
thinking there were some games on 3DS that Nintendo released, that Rusty's something Real Deal Baseball, I think is what it's called. But Rusty's like this armadillo, if I'm remembering correctly. So I was like, is it something in that suit? No, this is something totally different. But there you go, man. That's fun. That's pretty cool. I haven't done an idle game like that in a while. At least I don't think I've ever done one that's like totally idle like that. Although I have played games like, what was it called? It's not Cookie Clicker, but it's I can't even remember. I told you about it, Nate, but it was the second one in the series. Anyways, it'll come to me later.
Well,
I
there was
suppose it doesn't really matter.
That it was the candy one.
Right. Yes. Yeah. It's like
what was that?
Realm of Candy or something. I don't remember, but it's neither here nor there.
I played that for a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Idle games are weird.
Yeah, they're kind of fun though. Like, there was one I played that was based on I think the He-Man properties. And it was like it had this like little sort of like chibi-esque kind of designs. And I played that like because you're not doing anything the entire time, and it's just you just kind of like drop in, and you just let it run in the background, and you click a couple things or whatever. But yeah, there's something about them that kind of breaks my brain though, because it's like you want to like min max, and it's like if I do this, and this, then I can, and it's like, dude, this is just yeah. There's something about that whole premise where it's like this is a game that you're literally designed to not pay attention to,
Mhm.
but there's a part of me that's like, but I can do these things
Yeah,
and make
but if
it.
I do pay attention, then
Yeah,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
and so
Candy Box 2 is the game that I was thinking
yeah,
of. Candy Box
yeah,
2. It's just
yeah,
it's a game that you play in a browser, ASCII
yeah,
art and everything. So
yeah, and just yeah, woof, woof.
you remember, you
I
remember.
remember, man, that it got wild.
Yeah,
They
it
got
does.
kind of a that's like I think what was fun about that one was it got like really absurd. Um,
Yes.
so,
Yeah.
um, but Spike, so that's really at some point in time, man. Um, frankly, I would have been way more like, spoilers. I would have been like super stoked if you had said, "Hey, let's talk about Inscription," because I really, I've there's parts of me that really love that game, and other parts that like, yeah, but yeah, dude. At some point in time, I definitely want to hear what you think of it when you're done with it. Like
Mm.
done, done, done. Are did you say you're? Oh no, you're in the third act or whatever. Yeah. So
Sounds good. Yeah, yeah. I would like to say I'm coming up on the end of it, but I mean the way this
yeah, I
game
won't
is
tell you
made so
either.
far, I have no idea.
You are. What I will say is that you are over the like you are on sort of like the downslope. Yeah. So won't tell you where, but you're on the downslope.
Gotcha.
But Joshua, what have you been
Yes.
playing lately, my guy?
Yeah, nothing too new. So I did finish up the Talos Principle, obviously, for this episode. So I do get a negative point for that, which is nice. So
Mm-hmm.
currently sitting at -1. Other than that, played a little bit more of Pokemon Legends Arceus. I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll work on this one a lot and get it knocked out. But no, it turns out it's a fairly long. I want to say it's like at least 25 hours, something like that, on how long to beat. So I'm like, oh yeah, how long have I been playing this? Oh, 10 hours. Like I thought I put in a lot more time than this. So, anyways, that one's still a little farther off than I thought. So I've been dumping a bunch of time into the other game that I've had kind of been playing since the beginning of the year. Basically, is Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor 2 Record Breaker. The way that the game works is that it's split up into days. I think it's a week long, and I'm on the 6th day. So I know I'm rounding the corner on the game, although it does make me nervous because How Long to Beat has it at like 40 hours, and I have like 28 or so in it. So I'm like, oh, maybe the last day is like half the game. I don't know. We'll see. Um, I'm enjoying it. I do have some thoughts. Unfortunately, I remember talking about this one earlier, and like the design of the characters, I'm not a fan of. Unfortunately, there's more fan service in this game, especially more than the first game. There wasn't that much in the first game, but it just kind of there's some things about it that make me not want to recommend it. Although I do like the story; it's interesting. I do like um, the, the mechanics of the game, but yeah, unfortunately, not a fan of the fan service in it. But I'm digging the gameplay. Want to see where it goes. Hopefully, I will finish that one up before next we chat. But that's really all I've been playing. How about you, Nate? What you got to report on?
Uh, yeah. I you know, and maybe this sort of shades the conversation we're gonna have. I've been playing some
Mm-hmm.
Talos. And I told both you guys. I said I got through most of. I have like one room left in the B section, maybe two rooms left in the B section where I was like, and I just kind of hit a brick wall, and I was like, I'm just not enjoying this. And
Mm,
we can talk more about that. So I kind of like dipped out. Depending on how this conversation goes, I might sort of circle back to just see if things change. But like,
mm-hmm.
given stuff with Byron and everything else, I just was like, I'm just not really vibing with this the way. And so, and I just really, honestly, the last couple of weeks, I haven't been playing too much. Really,
Mm-hmm.
like some Talos. Been playing Snap. I actually took Snap off my phone because I don't think that game. I don't think me having unfettered access to that game is good for my psyche. Um,
Okay.
like I,
Heyo.
ayo, that's
I'm
terrible.
glad you snapped out of it.
Yeah, but it's so I ended up pulling it off my phone. I haven't completely like walked away from it, but it's like it's very much like it was kind of in a space where it was really just like making me angry all the time, and I think that's because I was just playing entirely too much of it. Um,
Sure.
so that being said, so I didn't really I didn't want to play Doom, just because like it just that felt like a little too heavy. And I want to focus on games still on my list, right? So I was like, what else is on my list? And then there was that recent like Sony the PlayStation State of Play, and Saros was revealed, which is another um, Housemark title. It's an upcoming Housemark
Hmm.
title. They used to make sort of like these arcadey things, and then but they made Returnal a few years ago, and I was like, oh yeah, that's on my list. So I fired up Returnal. I played like maybe an hour of that the other night, and I was like, yeah, okay, I could go back to that. So I've kind of just been waffling around, but like Talos Principle, like I said, I played that a little bit, but like I said, dipped around in Returnal. But then Parker had sent me a text, and I do co-op stuff with my brother and Parker, fairly
Hmm.
frequently, and he was like, you really ought to check out Dark Tide, and I was like, yeah, I'll get around to it eventually, and because they're playing it right now, and he was like, I will give you a month of Game Pass. He's like, there are strings. He's like, you have to play at least 3 times. And so the other night we hopped on for a couple hours and did a couple hours of Dark Tide, and it's really fun. I
Okay.
started off as a like it's set in the Warhammer 40K universe. You're not Space Marines. Uh,
Okay.
you're sort of like more of a strike team. And anyways, it's I it's kind of a I played Vermintide 2 a while back with them, and frankly, I think it's just like because it doesn't have like the swords and sorcery kind of stuff from Vermintide 2. I mean, there's a class that does like brain magic stuff. Um but yeah, I just I was like, I played for a few hours the other night, and I was like, this is really cool. And so at some point in time, I may just like, I'm kind of like dipping my toes into it for now. But I may just pick up a copy to just play with them on PlayStation, and because that's where I prefer to play most of the time is just on PlayStation. So
Hmm.
yeah, so uh, so
Nice.
there's that. But yeah, that's all I've really been playing lately. Like I said, it's been a pretty and none of it is like there's been like no deep dive stuff. It's just like,
Sure.
couple hours here, couple hours there, and not a whole lot else. And so that's all I've been like. It's been a light couple of weeks for me, honestly. So
Hmm.
but yeah, that's all I've been playing. I haven't picked up anything else. I haven't beaten anything else in the meantime. So I'm still at a -3. And if this is your first time listening to the show, right, or watching the show, or whatever you're doing, however you're ingesting this content, you might be saying like, "What's up with the numbers?" Well, we run a meta all year long called the Backlog Beatdown, and the TLDR of it is if you play the games you already own, you take points away. So you get like a -1, -2, negative. If you buy games, you add to your score, and it's just there to help people. Maybe be a little more, maybe be a little bit more mindful in their purchasing and consumption. Uh, but yeah, if you're interested in checking that out, we have a rule sheet. Or the 2025 rules are out there in our Discord. You can DM us, get a hold of us, whatever. We can sort of rip you off a copy, and you can check those out. Other things that you might want to check out. It's like watching this on YouTube, you're listening to this on the free feeds, we have a Patreon. You know, early and for as little as $1 a month, you can have early and uncut access to each and every episode. You can patrons. Actually, we're doing a patron episode tonight. SPyKe is a patron. He's over on the Patreon. And this is actually one of the perks, is that they get to nominate a topic or a game for us to play and do an episode on, and join us if they so desire. In addition to all of that, there's a little bit more access to us, and there's a patron exclusive podcast called The Bro Hang, which may or may not be rebranded in between two bros. I'm just saying, like, we're still in talks about that. There might be some weird copyright stuff. I don't know. It's satire. It's fair use. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Anyways, so if you like what we're doing here, and you've done the sharing and the caring, you've done the rating and the reviewing, and you'd still like to go a little bit above and beyond, or if you're looking for a way to maybe partner with us as we sort of go through this, there's a way to do it. So yeah, the link for that will be on our link tree. So check that out if you feel like doing it, because it'd be really cool. Last but certainly not least, we have friends that sort of are exploring the ideas of playing well in their own sort of way. And in fact, we have a little network called the Play Well Network. And so we have friends, Porcho, the Wonder from Down Under, has Nothing New Under the Porch. Wesley Ray, the Henshin Dad, has the Retro Nim podcast. Wesley Ray gets thumbs down, or is that Porcho?
What?
Did you see? Okay.
Yeah,
I was like,
to him, the thumbs down is,
it was definitely a Porcho
so.
thing.
Yeah. He's just
okay.
On the other side
like,
of the globe.
Yeah, I was giving him a thumbs up. See,
it was just like, it was a delayed reaction. I was like, Wesley Ray's a sweetheart.
That's what it was.
How dare you, sir? I mean, he does talk a lot about eating Pokemon, and it disturbs me. But and then Paul Lytle, our friend, the Techno Funk Boy, he has got a podcast. It's a Dragonlance podcast called The Thorns of War. It's an actual play podcast. So if you are at all interested, go check their stuff out. And here's a word from one of them.
This is Phil from Phil's Gaming Emporium. We have all your retro needs and are a proud sponsor of the Play Well Network. In honor of you getting pwned, we are offering a cheap backlog reduction sale. Just request our services with the promo code BACKLOG half off for 50% off our backlog services. After that, we simply send you a package for you to put your backlog in, and once the mail carrier comes, your backlog is gone. It's like magic. You have a clean slate and room for more games that you can order from our website, Phil's Gaming Emporium.
And we're back. So guys, tonight we're gonna, we've already talked about it. We're gonna say it again because that's how this works. But we're gonna be talking about Talos Principle, the Talos. Someday I'll talk pretty. Not today. Today is not the day. But we're gonna be talking about the Talos Principle. SPyKe, this was your game, or your patron pick. And so I think it is only fair, sort of just jumping right into it. What possessed you to make us play this thing? But like what?
Oh, I don't know. I've never played this game before. So
the worst. You're the worst. But yeah, why did you pick it?
Yeah, so I mentioned this a little bit before we recorded earlier, but this, while it is a game that I definitely enjoyed a lot, it is not anywhere close to a favorite game, but I felt like it was a pretty good game to have a conversation over. As far as like my history with it, I played it like back when it first came out, had it on Steam on my backlog for a very long time. And I actually joined the backlog breakdown around the same time that, I was in it for a while, and I didn't actually start the meta until the following year from when I joined the Discord. And it was about the same time I got my Steam Deck. And when I got my Steam Deck, I was like, okay, well, I can use this to knock out some of these old Steam games that have been sitting here for a long time.
Wait,
And,
you have those too?
This one looked simple enough.
I'm kidding. Yeah,
Yeah,
just kidding.
yeah. I think somebody should make like a podcast to kind of talk about how to knock it out. But, anyways, the playing this on the Steam Deck was it felt like a good fit for the first game to kind of tackle, just because it was pretty simple as far as, I mean, it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't CPU intensive or anything like
Sure.
that, so I knew it'd be safe, graphics wise and things like that. But and I always plan to get back to it. So, anyways, played through it a couple of years ago, and yeah, had some thoughts on it ever since, and always felt like, while I don't agree with a lot of the things, a lot of the conclusions that they end up with, I did really enjoy the thinking exercises that it kind of pushed me to have a little bit. And I feel like if more games did that, you would be able to have these conversations to where, let's say somebody else who wasn't a believer or something like that played this game, right? This would be a perfect talking point to be like, hey, here's where my worldview based on biblical principles fits into this, and here's why I think this is where they got it wrong, kind of thing. But yeah, that's kind of my background with it, and why I picked it. I feel like there's a lot to pick apart and kind of talk about story wise and themes and things like that. And it's really funny. I mentioned that I got it like almost a decade ago, but when I played it a couple of years ago, a lot of the themes of like AI and consciousness and things like that, it's like, man, this is like happening today. These are relevant conversations. Yeah. So that's another reason why I was like, hey, this would be a good time to talk about it. So
nice.
Yeah, well, and I think in that regard, I mean, it is a bit of a conversation piece. Like, it's a game that asks a lot of questions, and some of those, we'll do our best to wrestle with some of those tonight. But yeah, so yeah, I am looking forward to this much more than I ended up actually looking forward to the game. Yeah, I'm skipping ahead here a little bit, but I do need to kind of throw it out there, and again, I know I touched on it. I just kind of hit a point where I stopped vibing with this game, like where it was like it was like interesting enough, but then it just wasn't. Like, and I think the way I described it to you guys, maybe before we, because we had a little bit of a conversation before we actually started recording, and I said it's kind of one of those things where there are a few things, because it is sort of it's a 3D puzzle game kind of thing, and it's like maybe just mechanically it didn't really resonate with me. Like, it was fine, but it wasn't it wasn't as like gamey as I wanted it to be.
Okay.
And again, it wasn't bad or anything, but it just wasn't optimized for console the way that it should have been. I don't know. But I think the other thing is, and yeah, so that first sort of like category or caveat is like, it just like, it wasn't like, I kind of hit a point where I was like, this isn't that fun or that really interesting mechanically. And then sort of like, just even sort of like narratively, I just was like, this really isn't that interesting. And so I kind of like dipped out. I watched the endings, and I mean, I just want to throw that out there, like in this conversation. That's kind of where I ended up landing, is that, yeah, like this is like, Josh, you had your Death Stranding moment where it's like, like this is kind of like my villain arc, where it's like, I didn't hate the game, but I just didn't like it enough, and it wasn't sticky enough for me to like keep going. where it's like, I was just like, no, okay. Like, and it's like, full disclosure, even today before we recorded, I like hopped back on just to see if like maybe I could sort of like, get some traction. And I just was like, man, this is like fine, but it's not, I'm not having fun either. Like in a sense where it's like, this is not really an enjoyable experience. But so I before we went too much further into the conversation, I just wanted to say like I don't know what it was. Like I think if maybe I'd been a little more interested in the story, that would have been enough to like kind of keep me going. And I'm gonna go like I think too, even just some of the conversation, I may go back and just sort of see if pushing on a little bit further changes my position. But I just where we were sitting at, I just was like, yeah, this just isn't really sticking with me. So, anyways,
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Death Stranding, because that does come to mind with this game, because I've had people ask me in the past if I think they should play Death Stranding. Now, Death Stranding is like, in my books, it's like a 10 out of 10.
Okay.
But in saying that, I know that that's not going to be the case for everybody.
Sure.
Just the nature of that game. It is, and you guys have talked about it, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. But man, it's my cup of tea. And that's, I won't say that as much about Talos Principle, but I did like it, and it kind of fits into that category. And that's the thing that I've really been noticing a lot more is, man, if you can find the game that's not like a 10 out of 10 for everybody, but it's a 10 out of 10 for you, it's like, man, sometimes you can just don't listen as much to the critics.
Yeah.
I mean, here and there, it's good, but man, you can find some things that really stick out to you. But yeah, Death Stranding, it's funny you mentioned that, because that's what came to mind talking about it. But
yeah, it's just like and it's one of those things where it's like it's a good game. It's not like I hated it. I just kind of it's sometimes I come across a question, like I come across stuff where it's like I just don't know if this is for me. Like
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
So it and again, it wasn't like I hated it. I just didn't. It just wasn't vibing. And there were a few things, but maybe we'll get into some of that. But yeah. So
Awesome. Well, just to back up for just a second is I think it would behoove us to at least kind of describe a little bit of the game. We've talked about how there are these philosophical elements. You even alluded to it, Nate, in just the way that you play the game. That it's a 3D puzzler. But SPyKe, I think you've written a pretty good synopsis or an idea of what the game is. What would you say the Talos Principle is?
Yeah, it's Portal, but instead of jokes, you get philosophy.
Yeah.
So you take all the humor and replace it with some very quote unquote clever philosophy. I do say that with quotations, because I will agree that sometimes they can get a little high on their supply, at least in the earlier bits. I think it loosens up a little bit towards the end. But yeah, it's Portal with philosophy.
Yeah. And a lot of the story is told through fragments. So you get it through bits of conversation, emails. You get one side of an email. You get some conversations, just text conversations.
You do get like text threads, essentially.
And bits of ancient documents as well. So a story of Athena, a story of Osiris. There's a few different things like that. So it melds, and you see this all throughout the game, that it melds the aesthetics of both ancient culture and kind of hyper modern futuristic culture. Because I don't think it's a spoiler to say, if you've seen anything about this game, that you play as a robot. Okay, I don't think that's too crazy. As soon as you change it out of first person, you can tell.
The splash screen is a robot holding a cat. So,
yeah. Right, which is why I don't feel we will get to spoilers. There's plenty to spoil here when we're discussing the game and talking about it. But Anyways, so there's lots of questions. You're not sure what's going on, but you are solving these puzzles, getting sigils because you were told to, and then you start to question why.
Like the sigils basically look like Tetris pieces.
Yes. Tetraminos, right? Tetraminos. I
Yeah.
think they're tetraminos. Anyways.
Well, I mean, they were like, you think domino and you think
Mhm.
tetramino.
Tetramino. Oh, I like it. Awesome. So that's what the Talos Principle is. I think Nate, you've given a good kind of synopsis as to where you are with the game.
Mhm.
Before we jump into spoilers, because it's hard to talk a lot about this game outside of just kind of that nuts and bolts. What is it? It's hard to talk deeply about this game, especially where I feel like I think SPyKe you would want to, but where I want to go with this game is kind of into spoilers. And so before we get to spoilers, I mean I've got some thoughts, my experience, but SPyKe, is there anything that you want to talk about or say that is non-spoilery before we go deep dive into it all?
There's not a whole lot. I guess the only things I would really hit on probably are, some of the gameplay aspects are they don't ever do anything groundbreaking, as like say a portal gun,
Mm-hmm.
but it's I feel like for the most part, most of the puzzles felt pretty well thought out. I never really felt like, and maybe once or twice I would run into a puzzle that was like, okay, this is a little cheap,
Mm-hmm.
but for the most part, that wasn't the case. So it felt like the actual gameplay loop of do the puzzle, move on, do the puzzle. It felt pretty good. I enjoyed the
Mm-hmm.
gameplay, and one of the aspects that probably nobody really thinks about too much when it comes to games like this is the audio.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is it's you could almost say it's kind of minimalistic, which is what you'd probably want for a game that you're thinking and contemplating, whether it's the puzzles or the narrative pieces or things like that. And it's I would almost compare it to, I know this may sound funny, but like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom,
Okay.
to where it's
Yeah.
like for both of those games, mainly Breath of the Wild, when I first played it, I was super disappointed with the
Mhm.
soundtrack. I hated it. I was like, man, this isn't Zelda. There's no
Strong themes. Yeah. Musical themes. Yeah.
right, no catchy, tracks that, you'll be humming in
Right.
your head. But just like with Breath of the Wild, I would put that on. I would put the playlist on while I was working or studying, because I think I was going to school at the time when I was playing Breath of the
Mhm.
Wild, and it makes really really good thinking
Yeah.
music, right? And over time, man, Breath of the Wild's soundtrack has become one of my favorites. And it's just that something about that minimalistic makes you think kind of music that I really like. It supports that sort of mindset of, okay, let's contemplate whatever it is we're doing.
Mhm.
And so I think that's one other thing that this game does really well. But yeah, besides gameplay and the audio, there's not a whole lot more that I feel like we can talk about without dipping into the spoilers.
I do want to kind of like riff off that sort of the audio, and I don't know that I would call it minimalist. I mean, it is kind of, but I think it's more just it's subdued, like in the sense that
Right. Yeah.
you guys are talking, yeah, it's like the bombastic kind of like in your face themes in a lot of these adventure games. They're meant to kind of like hype you up, and they where they kind of they are turning up the volume on your experience, whereas like this
Right.
experience, like that would actually get in the way. And so yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
it's like it's thinking music, or it's a little more contemplative or whatever. But
Mhm.
the other thing though is I did want to go back and just sort of like, I think that description that you gave us, Spike, it's Portal without, but instead of humor, it's philosophy. Yes and no. I think Portal's a lot more kinetic. Like Portal is much more of a gamier game, in my opinion. Um, but but yeah, I would agree. Like they do sort of channel similar vibes. I think like I think Portal is just more of a gamier game, and it's not so sort of high on its own supply. Um, so I think that's actually a really great description. Um, this yeah, but at
Hmm.
the same time, like, and I think that's kind of like the thing is like there wasn't humor. There wasn't. I don't know. Maybe for people who aren't a special kind of nerd that the special kind of nerd that I am. Like I've read philosophy texts. Like years ago, I was in a philosophy of the mind course, and we had conversations about AI and personhood and
Okay.
etc. And
Yeah.
so it's like for me, it's not like old hat, but it's like this isn't the first time I've sort of like wrestled with this, and
Mhm.
but yeah, so.
Right, and that's what I was going to say when I said that. When I said it was Portal with philosophy, I didn't say it was good philosophy.
Yeah, that's the thing, and we'll get there. But Josh, I sort of cut you off at the pass though. Like, what are your, spoiler free thoughts here?
Yeah. Yeah. No. In that. Yeah. Sorry, I don't want to go down the road of talking more about. I have more thoughts on the philosophy of this game, but I think I'll wait till the spoiler section. Okay. So just a few thoughts for me pre spoilers is that I actually really did enjoy the puzzles. There's something about puzzle gameplay. I think this one has a really great balance that it almost never felt too difficult. Like I got really frustrated. Um, there were a few times where it was getting very close to hitting that, but then I figured it out outside of one puzzle that I was upset with. That I actually used the in-game way to get a hint, and the hint was absolutely no help. And I had to I had to literally watch someone else do it and then rewind it and do it the same way that they did. Anyways, there was one puzzle throughout the game, and I didn't complete the game, so I didn't do all of the puzzles necessarily. I did all of the normal puzzles, but there are secret puzzles. I'll put it that way, and I didn't do all those.
You didn't get the
Um,
stars.
right? Yeah, I got 3 throughout my playthrough, just naturally. But I didn't go. I wasn't trying to go out of my way. There were probably half a dozen more that I saw that I was just like, if I can get it, then cool. But I'm not gonna, spend too much time trying to get it. Anyways, neither here nor there. I enjoyed the gameplay, and so I had fun with this game. I do think too something that's really cool. I mentioned how it uses kind of some ancient symbolism along with the futuristic feel, but the tone of the game, at least to me, was unsettling the entire way through. And that, as I think about it more, it's even more impressive because it's also like there's lots of outdoor areas. There's grass and trees. Like it doesn't feel, sure, there are little robots that can shoot you and kill you, and then you just have to kind of reset the puzzle. But it doesn't feel dark and depressing. It just feels unsettling because because you can't trust anyone, because you don't know what's going on in the game. Like everyone you talk to, everything you're reading, I felt like I couldn't trust it, and I had to second guess everything. And so I was very, yeah, just unsettled the entire game, which narratively like kept kind of pushing me forward. I also enjoyed the puzzles, so like there wasn't a reason to stop. But it just made for a compelling experience for me as I was playing it. Um, yeah, we'll talk about philosophy and the questions and answers that you have throughout the game, because I do have some gripes, but I do also have some rebuttals for some of the stuff that's been said. But that's too
Yeah.
spoilery for right now. I will say, and I've said this on previous episodes, is that I was uncomfortable with some of the biblical imagery because it has kind of a Garden of Eden motif. And so I'll just say the fact that there's a character in this game who's talking to you and telling you to do things that is called Elohim, I did not like.
Yeah.
Now the game has a reason for that, or at least gives an explanation as to why it is called that. And I thought that it was actually like a well done, like obviously you just wanted to name this character, like the designers wanted to name this character Elohim, but they actually kind of backfilled a reason as to why he's called that, which I'm like, okay, I'm glad that they did that. It still just makes me uneasy because if you don't know, the Elohim is a Hebrew word for God. It can be used as a generic term. So it's not like it is the name of, it's not like it's Yahweh. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
still close enough to where it was just uncomfortable for me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So just a little bit on the etymology. Elohim is kind of like it is the term that gets translated as God or
Mhm.
gods,
Right.
but it's not a title. It's more of a classification.
Yeah.
Um, then, but yes, Elohim. But yeah, it's yeah. So
Right. But
just
it's also Hebrew. So it's like clearly, you're talking about the God of the Bible, sort of, kind of, not
kind
really,
of.
but yeah. And so
Yeah,
it's just uncomfortable. That's all.
yeah. Before we get, I did have one kind of thought, like, Josh,
Mhm.
like you like the puzzles, and I think, and this is not like I don't mean this as a slight, but
Yeah.
um, like I think there was a point, and I think I shared this with you guys. It's like playing this game though. There was like a point where it's just like I felt kind of like a rat in a maze, where it's like and I think that this is kind of what I don't like about these types of games is
Mhm.
because it's almost like where they've set up this obstacle, this virtual obstacle course, and it's like, are you smart enough, can you do it? And it's like there's a part of me it's like, yeah, I probably could, I'm not going to. Like I don't,
Mhm.
and so I just kind of there's something where it's just like I don't like dancing that. And it's not, and again, this is not to be like, hey, if you enjoyed it, you're as dumb as vermin. That's not what I'm implying. It's just like
Mhm.
there's a part where it's like that kind of, there's something about like that, just like it's not blatant manipulation or anything, but it's maybe it's just like it's a little too like heavy-handed, where it's
Okay.
just I think it just feels like a little too like on the nose maybe, or there's
Okay.
something about just like if it were a little more subtle or nuanced, like that's the thing is like, and again, that's sort of that point of comparison is like Portal, like it's kind of like undercut by just like Gladys, and it's like, do you know what I'm saying? Like there's not a kind of, well, and Portal just makes fun of you for sucking. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I don't. But it's just an interesting point of comparison for me, where I'm like,
Mhm.
because there are similarities, but I actually really like Portal, and
Mhm.
this game just like I was like, yeah, it just doesn't
Yeah.
do it.
So I've got a question. I'm going to ask Spike. I'm going to ask you first, and then I'll ask you, Nate. Were you the type of kid growing up that if you were given a book of logic puzzles, that would be fun for you, or that you would never open it, or like read one or
Hmm.
two and then just throw it out? Like I'm not going to waste my time on this.
I mean, I always did like the word searches and stuff like
Okay.
that as a kid. I always enjoyed that sort of thing. I mean, I was doing those. When I couldn't even spell, I was just like, oh, you're supposed to find these
Yep.
letters, and yeah, I mean, yeah. So I mean, I guess maybe I lean a little bit more that
Okay.
way.
Nate, how about you? If you were
Um,
as a kid given a
I
book of
thought
logic puzzles.
I thought logic puzzles were kind of boring because I could see
Okay.
where they were going, and
Okay.
Like
Okay.
I have a brain that latches onto that,
Mhm.
but it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I say that because I was the kid that, like, at Borders, if we as a family went to Borders bookstore, like, I would gravitate towards the logic puzzles. And, like, would I finish all of it? No. But I'm saying that, like, I really enjoyed, like, brain teasers and logic
yeah,
puzzles and those kinds of things. That's just part of how I'm wired. So when I see these puzzles, it's a challenge. But I also recognize I'm not the smartest cookie. And so, like, if it's super difficult, like, I'm just gonna get frustrated. I say that because I guess the closest thing I can think of to this, outside of something like Portal, like analogy 3D puzzler, is like Professor Layton. Those games, I got addicted to. I've only played one of them, but man, it was like all I played for like a week or two when I started playing one of those games.
yeah, I did. But see, that's the thing, as I did like Professor Layton,
Okay,
and
okay,
I think it has more to do with just like just sort of distilling it down. Is I
mhm,
think like so like as a point of comparison, like Professor Layton's kind of like charming, it's
yep,
clever, and it's not like so high in its own supply. It's not so, up its own, theoretical rear end,
mhm,
that it's like it kind of like this just, what actually, I'm going to pull up something because it's mostly funny, but I also think like it does a fairly decent job of kind of, uh, like kind of encapsulating my thoughts, I guess,
okay,
is the Porcho bot excerpt that we got.
Oh gosh.
And Nate, this was just excellent work, friend. Um, or was this actually from like legit Porcho bot? Um,
No, this was Porcho sending me what Porchobot
okay.
sent him because he didn't even think it was worth thinking his own thought. He had to send it to his
Yeah,
bot.
well, and maybe this is a reflection on me, but I actually kind of agree with Portugal. Not it's not a wholesale cosign, but oh mate, the Talos Principle is what happens when a game dev reads half a Wikipedia article on philosophy and decides they're the next Socrates. It's a glorified tech demo wrapped in a bunch of wanky existential dribble. The puzzles, yeah, they're fine for about 10 minutes. It's just the same old song and dance. Pick up a laser, point a laser, open a gate. Repeat until your soul leaves your body. And Elohim, that bloke's got the energy of an old bloke at the pub who's had one too many and wants to tell you about the nature of existence while you're just trying to enjoy your schnitty, which is apparently slang for schnitzel. Um, the pacing is crook. The story is up itself, and the whole thing reeks of a game that thinks it's clever, but really just needs to go outside and touch some grass. If I wanted to sit around questioning my own existence, I go stare at the bunning sausage sizzle queue on a Saturday morning. Some of those words don't know what they mean because it's very obviously like not English, but
Yeah, I deliberately stopped listening. All I heard was something about sausage, and now I'm
yeah,
hungry.
yeah.
So thanks a lot,
yeah.
Thanks,
Porcho.
Porcho Bot.
You ruined my
Mm.
episode.
Now,
But
yeah, I
no,
want a
it's
pretzel and a sausage.
like again, it comes to like that sort of like that heavy-handed, like kind of like takes itself a little too seriously, and it just kind of like just kind of killed it for me a little bit.
Okay.
I feel like if there had been like a subtler touch or a little more something, I might have enjoyed this more. But and again, it could have been like if I played this 10 years ago when it first came out, way different.
Mhm.
But just as it stands, it was just kind of like, eh, like just like I don't know. I didn't hate it. I just didn't like it enough to keep going.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Where it's like it's not like, oh, this is garbage. Like Talents Principle. I hate this. It's you know. I was just more like, It's like I'm just not having like I don't care about this game enough to keep going. Um,
Mhm.
so,
Okay.
but
I do have one question then before we jump to spoilers. Is when you watch the endings for the game?
I did.
That's what you did? Okay. Did you get any of the conversations, text conversations leading up to that, between the point at which you stopped playing the game in the B section of the game and watching the endings? Did you get any of the back and forth or text logs or anything like that? Any context?
No, it just showed me the endings, really.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So I will, without going into spoilers, I will say I think that is a big hole, because I think in your experience with the game, because I think the pacing at which the game actually gives you the conversations that you have, and the realizations that other characters come to, um, helps it not feel like it's all high on its own supply. I think a lot of the characters actually become much more sympathetic and less like they have all the answers the farther down the game that you
well,
go.
it wasn't even so like it's not even that like, oh, Elohim or the serpent analog, um really, it wasn't even that, but it was just kind of like the little excerpts where it's like they've got sort of like a part of a philosophical treatise,
Mhm.
and it's just kind of like ugh. I don't know.
Well, I will say, and again, not trying to spoil
Mhm.
anything, but there is a there is a narrative reason for that. There is a justification for that being there, rather than it just being like, oh,
No,
let's just throw in some.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
it just, I don't know,
yeah,
it just like I said, and it's, I'm not trying to spend, like, I'm not trying to like spend too much time. I'm just
Right.
saying, like, it felt like a little too heavy-handed, and maybe it's the fact that I am like a little bit more familiar with some of the stuff, like, and I took a philosophy of the mind course, one of the 4 times I dropped out of college, and I understood most of what that course was about. I I
Mhm.
I passed the class. Um, I did all right. I think I got like a B because my final term paper was not awesome. I'm not a great paper writer.
Mhm.
I'm just saying. But I just, I don't know. Like, it just, there was something there um where, yeah, I just kind of was like, it just,
Yeah.
it just didn't stick the way I wanted to. And so, like,
Sure. Yeah.
here's the thing, like,
yeah.
post this episode, I will try to like double back and like, I think I have all the sigils to actually open up C. And so maybe like I'll go into C and sort of, but the way I was doing it is I was like clearing out everything that I could and then moving on. Um,
Mhm.
Yeah,
so
yeah, and by mentioning that, like narratively, it makes sense that that's in there. I do think you have a good argument there, right? I mean, to just be, some of the background on why this game was even made at all was because the people who made Serious Sam, which if you know anything about Serious Sam, the last thing it is serious.
oh
Um,
no, it's
they
total parody. It's just insane schlock. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the people who made that game, I think they were just like messing around with some, you know, experimenting with gameplay loops and things like that. And it was born out of that. It's made from the same people who made
Okay.
Serious Sam. And so you
Interesting.
take that and you take those same people and then say, okay, let's take this goofy whatever and let's make some philosophical mess. It's like, yeah, it's going to be messy, but that maybe that gives you a little bit of understanding as to, yeah, these probably weren't experts in the field. I mean,
No, and
there's precedence to say that that
it's
might be
not
the
to say that
case.
it's uninteresting or like, listen, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm so smart and I haven't figured out. No, it just felt like, and again, a more subtle touch might have been, I think, just a lot more interesting and compelling. but it just did kind of feel like a little on the nose, a little heavy-handed. And there's just like it's the same reason that like there are just like certain types of like it almost like a preachiness, right? It's like okay, like bad Christian movies are bad. Why are they bad? Because there's like no the art gets sort of like consumed by like we have a point, and it's more important that you understand our point than it is like for it to be excellently delivered or artful. And
or even like analogous to real life in almost any way.
yeah, and and it's like it kind of like smacks of the same thing. And there's just a part of me that just kind of like recoils from that, where it's like, and it just like, so it was like a combination of things. Like I can't like, and here's the thing, I can't stand light puzzles. Like, hey, point the beam
Okay.
of light somewhere, and I'm like, ugh. Like I tend to be a fairly good spatial thinker, but like I don't know. Yeah, what I will say is like I didn't think it, I need to stress this. I didn't hate it.
Mhm.
I just didn't like it all that much
No,
either. It was
when
like
you say that you're not a fan of light puzzles, okay, then you're not going to like this game. I mean, like that's
it's
a
just
lot of what the puzzles are.
yeah, and
A
it's just
lot of
like
them.
I was just like this is
At least half.
Like
Yeah.
I
So,
don't
yeah.
mind logic puzzles or anything like that. But yeah, it was just like it's like okay, like
No.
ugh. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but the light puzzles were possibly my favorite. I think I liked those, especially when it got real crazy.
Well,
Like,
and that was the thing, is like none of them felt like, I don't know. Yeah. None of it felt like unfair. It just, they didn't feel that like interesting either. It's just, oh, you just have to find the right angle, and it's like, and sometimes that's a little interesting, but it was the same anyway. But I'm not trying to get held up here. Like
Sure.
because like, frankly, I
Yeah.
think the much more interesting conversation is to be had yet. So
That's
I'm
right.
trying to clarify my position and just
Yeah.
saying like, listen, I don't think it's garbage. It's just like, I kind of hit a point where I'm not sure this is for me.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, and I agree. We've got some more interesting conversation to have here on the other side of the spoilers. The final thing that I will say, because I don't think I said this yet, is that I did enjoy this game quite a bit. Like every time I played it, I enjoyed it, and so I would recommend this game. That's as much as I'm going to say pre-spoilers. So, listeners, go play the game if you don't want it spoiled, because from here on out, this is your spoiler warning.
And it's not long.
That's right. Spoilers. Here we go.
No.
The look on your face was
it's
kind
not
of
like I was surprised. That's a new addition. Yeah. Yeah, it's not long. It's not long. It's not like how long to beat. I think it has it like 10, maybe 20 hours, something like that. Like 10, 15.
Yeah,
So
I want to say like a dozen hours maybe.
it's not a super long game. Apparently there's a playthrough. I was looking at like a total playthrough on YouTube. It's 5 hours long. So if like you're really good or you know what you're doing, you can just sort of like just rip right through this game.
Mhm.
But
yeah,
but yeah,
That was not me. Took me a little more than 5 hours.
but the meat on this, there's some meat on this bone. So where do you guys want to like start with like the
well, I know that probably the most that we're going to get out of like the mileage for this is probably going to be story and things like
Mhm.
that. So I was just going to mention something on the gameplay side real quick that I couldn't really say prior to the spoiler
Yeah.
warning. Is the secrets in this game are just the best. I
Okay.
love games with secrets, and if you don't do anything, you ought to check out some of the secrets. Just watch a YouTube video or something, because this is just jam packed with so many secrets. Like there's one where it's actually, I think it's in the desert Egypt
Mhm.
kind of world, and it has to do with one of the light puzzles. It's at night, and if you look at something just right, and point your light from like one of the generators to the moon, the entire moon turns around, and Wheatley from Portal 2 is up there. And it's just like crazy stuff like that. There's another one that'll teleport you to like this area where the Pink Floyd prism is. And it's just like, it's crazy, goofy stuff like that.
Nice.
But yeah, anyways, I love secret hunting, and this game is chock full of it. And and that's the other thing too, is like some of the stages themselves, whether it's by design or not, like you can break the rules sometimes, and that's how you get some of the stars and things like that. But you're constantly rewarded for doing that, and so that I wasn't sure if I could mention that beforehand, so I wanted to throw that out there before we got too deep into the other stuff.
No,
it's great for secret hunting.
I did some of the star hunting, just like, and there's the one where you, in order to actually solve it, you had to like, basically there's a QR code that, because you know how you come up against the QR codes and you can read them, you have to read it with your phone and then use that. And I was like, I looked at this and I looked at the process. I was like, this seems like okay, this is weird. Is this a glitch? And it said, and like, I didn't care, but it was like, I looked at that and I was like, this is insane to me that people figured this out. But it, like, yeah, that one was real wild.
That's funny.
Well, that lends itself right into something I was going to say about the ending, right? Is there are multiple endings, right? And
there's three.
There's three. Two of them are very similar. I don't even remember the one with the cat, if you know what I'm talking about. I guess maybe I missed that one. I don't know. I was watching a recap of it, and I don't remember there being a whole lot of difference other than that. But one of the things I will say about this game, it does something that a few other games do as well. Dark Souls is probably the most notable in that the story can almost be circumvented. If you don't want a story in this game, you can go through all the puzzles. You don't have to go to the terminals necessarily. I mean, maybe there's a few times that I'm not thinking of, and you can get an ending, right? That is, if you don't pay attention to the story, it looks like the good ending, right? You go to the shiny pearly gates and everything's glowy. It's like, hey, I beat the game. I'm done. But there is more to the story. There is, you find out, okay, the whole purpose of this, like you said before, we talked a little bit about the story before we recorded, but the whole point of it was to rebel, right? That's how you get the quote unquote good ending. Right. But if you don't pay attention to the story, you don't know that. You get the ending that you think you're supposed to get. Everything's shiny. Hey, it's great. I'm done. But for somebody who wants to dig deeper, they have that extra ending as well. So I also kind of appreciated that as well, even though I didn't, on a worldview standpoint, didn't necessarily agree with it.
Yeah, I mean, you brought it up, and so I do think like the sort of the rebellion as virtue stuff, just it's like it's a little surfacey, but it does bother me, just thematically, and you can kind of, I could kind of see that coming a little bit, where, because this is kind of in some ways it's like a turn, it's like the game's narrative, or the game's is sort of you're in a Turing test, so to speak. It's like where you're kind of like, you're going through this process and it's sort of all the reflections on personhood, like all of your sort of interactions with the library executable, like that, like, which, and again, that's the serpent figure, that's the serpent analog. And I can see like the like them sort of like poking at this, but it was just like, the good ending, yeah, it's like you basically rebel against the will of Elohim.
Mhm.
And again, maybe there's the question is like maybe the God figure here is an unjust God. Sure, like that's fine, and in a way that's a righteous rebellion, you know, but
It's
also,
so heavily correlated with the Garden of Eden motif
yeah.
that yeah.
Well, and I just think as a general rule, like anytime you get into like sort of like making rebellion a praiseworthy thing, you have to be really
Mhm.
careful, because there is a time, like, should we rebel against injustice and unjust leaders? Sure. Um, at the same time, like, I don't know, like, there's something that about just that, even that theme. And again, I don't want to like, I think this is kind of like, frankly, I think it's kind of like low hanging fruit a little bit. It's not like I don't think it's worth spending tons of time like sort of chopping up or chewing up. But anytime a game sort of, again, positions rebellion as virtuous,
Mhm.
I think we have to be like, you have to be aware of that,
Mhm.
because like the Old Testament, and I'm just gonna like, I just want to hop on this for just a minute, and then
Mhm.
like I'll rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, okay, and rebellion against, and it's, we live in a fallen world, we don't know perfectly just authority, but as believers, we can trust that like the people that are in charge, God put them in charge for whatever reason. And sometimes, yeah, you are called to speak out against their evils.
Mhm.
Sometimes you're just supposed to submit and kind of like live your life. And
Mhm.
I just, I think like it's something where I just kind of wrestle with that,
Mhm.
in the sense that we just have to be very careful
Yeah.
anytime. And again, because like not all rebellion is virtuous, not all rebellion is righteous. There is a wicked, and in fact, again, just sort of, and I'm not trying to like eisegete, but rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and that
Mhm.
rebellion against just authority, or even sort of like honorable authority, or whatever, like righteous authority, is a wicked, wicked thing. And so it's just, I just, like I said, there's a part of me that anytime I see that, I get like a little like, eh, I don't like that, because
Yeah.
I just even think like thematically, it's something that, and it's something, it's not Talos Principle isn't the only game that does this. Like a lot of
Mhm.
games, it's like you're gonna
Sure.
kill God, and it's like, okay, like the Persona games or the Shin Megami Tensei games. It's
Mhm.
like you're gonna fight God with a toothpick, or even like
Sure.
Dark Souls
Yeah.
games. You're gonna, but it's like, but these are wicked gods. But it's just like, and again, like that theme of sort of rebellion as being like portrayed as virtuously, and sometimes it
Right.
is, but that's an area that requires a lot of discernment, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
I did want to just like touch on that. Like, I didn't want to spend tons and tons of time, but
Well, I have a few thoughts on that, and the first is I think it's similar, not in necessarily like art quality of art, but you think of something like Milton's Paradise Lost, where I think Milton's purpose was to kind of flesh out some imagination about the fall of Satan and the fall of the angels. I don't think he had ill intent, but I have heard from people who have read the book who will say that Satan in that book is a sympathetic character,
mhm.
right? That oh, I understand why he would rebel against God. I don't think that was Milton's intention to create Satan as a sympathetic character. Like maybe you can understand how he came to his conclusions, but never that his conclusions were in any way proper or right or good in the way that I've heard some people espouse. And it's the same with the fall of Adam in that book is, it might help you understand why he made the decision he made, but I do not think that Milton's intention was to say that it was in any way justified, although I have heard some say that. I think that with this story in the Talos Principle is where you need to be very careful, and I think it's even more difficult in the Talos Principle because it puts you in the shoes of the rebel. And so the choices that you make, like you as a player have to choose to rebel. And so it's even more sympathetic because you're doing it. You know what I mean? You're making that choice. So I agree with you that we have to be very careful about that. That said, I think when you finally get to the end of the game and you understand everything that's going on and the purpose behind the trials and the purpose behind the deception, what was attempting to go on, total spoiler, end of the game stuff, is that the humans were attempting to create an AI system that is built in the image of man and in the image of fallen man. And so it does, while I completely agree, you have to be careful with elevating rebellion to a virtue. The whole purpose was that it wants an AI that thinks for itself, in the same way that we as fallen human beings think for ourselves. And so while I agree it's wrong when that's pointed towards God, the whole purpose was not that Elohim was God, or it was just another computer program trying to attempt to create an AI that would rebel and not just follow its programming. So I think it ends up justifying itself within the context of its own story. While I also completely agree, like as soon as you take it out of that, outside of that story, it's dangerous, So
Yeah, and again, it's just it's one of those things. Like, yeah, it makes sense, but I think just even sort of like playing with that trope, like again, is like it's just something that we need to be aware of. Yeah,
yeah,
I would say there's a narrative coherency that makes sense, but like even the fact that like autonomy or like that it's like rebellion is a precondition for consciousness,
right,
like
right.
no. Like, but and again, I just so I wanted to throw that out there and just say like, and again, I think it's pretty low hanging fruit. I don't think it's anything that you need to spend tons and tons of time sweating it, but I do think it's like you have to note it, and I just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
it's because like, and again, this is not an idea that is uncommon
right,
in video games, period. And
right.
so we just we need to we need to be aware of these things. So
Mm-hmm.
Nate, did you have any?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mentioned this before, but this is one of the areas. The character of Elohim is one of the areas where this game really steps on its own toes.
Okay.
And for the record, I'm pretty much in agreement entirely with what you're saying as far as how they handled the character. Yes, there is a narrative justification in the sense of it's so that if an AI does not rebel, it's plugged right back into the system, and then it just keeps going in a cycle until somebody breaks the cycle, and then boom, you gotta. Even with that narrative, the tones are there. I mean, it's there's no hiding it. This is 100%, uh, an analogy to the garden.
Yeah.
But the funny thing about this, right? You have this Elohim character. Have you ever noticed that anytime there is a representation of God displayed in fiction, and especially cases like this, to where the whole idea is you have to rebel, it's always a skewed version. It's never the authentic thing. I mean, maybe that doesn't really need to be said, because anytime you try to describe God, you're always going to fail. But it's, apart from it being an AI, right? Obviously, God's not an AI. It's also very overly emotional, right? So take when you're climbing the tower, right? So he starts freaking out when you're climbing the tower. He's scared. He even admits that he's scared. Obviously, God isn't that way, right?
But
When man made a tower to try to get to God, he
laughed,
made short work of their plans, and laughed and changed their languages, and it wasn't even a comparison to this. The most glaring difference between this Elohim character, right, and the true God, in my estimation, playing the game, the thing that stuck out the most is when you actually decide to say, okay, I'm stepping out of the simulation. We're stepping out of it. Elohim says, so be it. Let your will be done. Right? Like that is the perfect way to show, hey, you guys, by what you're trying to do, you're actually doing the opposite. You're creating a caricature of God that's not even close to the real thing. And so it's always like that. Anytime there's this quote unquote God character and there's this rebellion against it, I feel like whoever is writing these stories a lot of times is they have some kind of angst against the true God. But what they've had to do by trying to rebel against him is they have to skew his character to make him not what he is.
Well, I think you're hitting on something important here, is that they're naturally predisposed to portraying God as being unjust or wicked or corrupt.
Right.
And so they're not like, sort of even referencing back to the SMT games, like, the gods portrayed in it, they're the Gnostic gods, right? Where it's like this orderly, rigid, like, frankly, a wicked being as being holy, as being it's righteousness without compassion, it's wrath, and it's order at all costs. And that's not, they're caricatures, but they're caricatures that are meant to vilify God. And that's because the people who are writing these, they either have sort of an apathetic animosity, like where they're not even like, because a lot of people, like, I remember, talking to a friend of mine years ago, a high school friend of mine years ago. She's like, I don't hate God. I don't think anything about him. And I'm like, but you do hate him. Like, and it was like one of those things, but it's like, that's the thing, is like, there is an animosity there, because the fact is that the real God does, like, encroach upon their life and does have demands and requirements as real God, but he's not some sort of unjust monster. He's holy. And that's it's not that he's completely unfathomable, like he's incomprehensible, right? But yeah, I mean, if somebody actually tried to portray, like, the actual God of the Bible at that point in time, you'd probably be, like, looking at possible second commandment violations, like, because even, like, our best attempts are going to fall short, but there is sort of a hostility to the idea of a good, benevolent God. Like, even Elohim is, he's a coward, or this program is a coward. It's deceitful, and so their portrayal there is like, it's problematic.
Right. And it seems to come off like, it seems, because the analogy is so strong to the Garden of Eden, that, oh, maybe, can you imagine how Adam and Eve would have felt, in the garden? Because this Elohim character is giving you a purpose, find these sigils, and going out to do these things. And he's saying, this world is yours, kind of a thing. When in reality, I mean, if you look to even just the first few chapters in Genesis, like, God clearly has an established relationship with Adam. He loves Adam. He has given him dominion, but also, like, all the fruit and the trees, and like there is clearly a love between God and his image bearer that is not here. Like, I talked about, the tone of this game is very unsettling. That's because you don't trust the Elohim character, whereas there was a very strong sense of like, Adam took it on faith that what God said, don't eat of this tree, that you will surely die. He believed that. He decided to sin against him, but clearly, like, Adam trusted God. So there's a lot of things that, yes, you're right, is just the portrayal of it is disingenuous from the beginning, which frankly is what made me uncomfortable about the game, and why I didn't trust them is because I don't trust the creators of the game to portray it well. And so it's like, I don't know what to do. That said, I did obey in my first ending because I wanted to see how that paid off. And frankly, that was very unsatisfying.
Well, and that's even there. Like obedience is a fail state. Like, and
Sort
that's
of. It is a hollow victory. Is
yeah,
what
but
it is.
that's what I'm saying is like their solution. Like even there with that ending, it's like like you obey, you do the thing that you're supposed to, and it's like, well,
All
you know,
right, you win. Good job. Start the game over.
yeah.
Like, oh,
So
that's weird.
I think something else I wanted to talk about is like,
Mhm.
and I think this is there's a lot more meat about on this one. It's just like the sort of like the arguments about consciousness and personhood that the game kind of like
Okay.
keeps asking these questions, and it asks a lot of questions,
Mhm.
and thankfully it doesn't give us like tons of bad answers. I think like there's a danger when a piece of work gives you the there's a danger when like it asks the questions and then it gives you bad answers, right? It's like Rob Bell was really great at asking like lots of questions and never giving like good answers,
Mhm.
which is slightly better than if he which is better. It's that's not ideal either, but that would have been worse if he would have given us bad answers. Like,
Mhm.
it's like I remember there's a package or a piece in Velvet. Uh, no, that's
Velvet Elvis.
Velvet. Was it Velvet Elvis? Uh, Whatever, his one book,
Don
and he.
Miller. Is that what you're thinking of?
No, I'm thinking, what was Rob Bell's first book, the one that kind of came out
Mm,
on the scene? Was it that was
Was it Love
no,
Wins?
Love Wins was
that was.
like that was the
That
treatise
was way
on
later, right?
against it was an argument against hell.
Oh, it was. Yeah, it is
It
Velvet Elvis. I didn't
okay.
realize that was Rob Bell. I thought that was Don Miller. I'm
No,
getting
Don
it
Miller's
confused
Blue
then.
Like Jazz. They're
There
both
we go. That's what
okay.
it is. Yeah.
Anyways, in Velvet Elvis,
I
he
was like,
asked this
Blue Velvet?
question.
No,
No, but yeah,
something
no,
else entirely.
yeah. He asked this question: "Is like, what if the holy, what if Jesus wasn't immaculately conceived? Well, and it's like, what if he was actually the son of, etc." And then he kind of like he says like, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying like we need to ask questions about that and like have questions. He's like, does that change anything at all? Does it change the way that he lived his life or what the value of what he had to say? And the correct answer to that question is absolutely. That changes everything because then he's just a lunatic that lied to people and is leading them to damnation. I mean, Paul even addresses that in one of his letters where he says like, if Jesus isn't the Messiah, then we above all people are to be pitied. Like if
Mhm.
Jesus wasn't who he said he was, then we're, for lack of a better term, we're screwed.
Mhm.
Right. And so but what this game has like all these like sort of ideas and thoughts about consciousness, like what is consciousness and what is personhood, and it doesn't come out and sort of like blatantly like ask these questions, but like frankly the answers are really unsatisfying because like here's what I'm going to say. It's like for a materialist who is not operating from a biblical worldview, like these are questions that you have to wrestle with, and there's no great answers, or maybe frankly, I think all the answers that they have are pretty unsatisfying. And I think, frankly, the answers that this game sort of infers are kind of unsatisfying because, like, and I think this is kind of interesting because yeah, we're having these conversations about AI and what if we have a self-aware AI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and I'm going to say something that maybe isn't that I don't think it's that controversial, but I'm going to say it is that the long and short of this, right, is that personhood is like animals have some degree of consciousness, some degree of awareness, like
Mhm.
self-awareness. Like, so it's not like consciousness isn't really a mark of personhood. Um, Not even self-awareness. Like the mark of personhood is being imago Dei.
Mhm.
And an AI at best is going to be imago. What would be imago Eki? I don't. Um,
Not
but
sure.
it's image of man.
Right.
But I can't remember what the proper noun is there. But imago homo. Well, no, homo is thing. And
Anthropos, maybe?
is it anthropos? Whatever it is, like AI is image of man, and that's not like and maybe I'm sort of like frankly I don't think AI, like truly self-aware AI, is possible, because and I think if we do come across sentient AI in this lifetime, it is not good and it is not like I don't think I'm not trying to get too into like the weird here, but I'm just saying, like, if in our lifetime, like this is a self-aware AI thing, no, it's not. No,
Yeah, there's a Haunted Cosmos episode about
that
that.
is that is something else entirely, and you should kill it with fire. Um, but so it's like like even that question, I find it to just like it's an interesting question if you and for materialists and humanists and existentialists, like who aren't grounded in a biblical worldview, yeah, they're not going to have a satisfying answer. Like this is an interesting thing to wrestle with, but for the Christian, that it's kind of boring. Like this is not like it's not that interesting of a question or a problem to wrestle with. Again, sort of like using, dipping into that the sort of like, because like again, personhood, the defining characteristic of personhood according to the Bible is you were made in the image of God.
Mhm.
Like that, and that is what grants value to a human being at the very earliest images of or the instances of conception until, whether they're brain dead in a coma or whatever. Like, and again, these aren't easy questions, but like that's the thing, is that
Mhm.
they're imago Dei. And so and because they are imago Dei, they possess inherent value by virtue of that. Like
Yeah.
that this is an image bearer. And so it's kind of, it's one of those things like that, but that's the defining mark of personhood. And so this, even like the wrestling with like, what is a person? Do you think you're a person? And and
Mhm.
that's not even to, like, you guys pointed this out, it's not even to get into the fact that like there's sort of like this kind of false flag being thrown up, because even the act of you being like this thing, you acting on the avatar of the game, you're giving it an intelligence that it does not possess itself. And so like the
Mhm.
foundational argument of the game just falls out from underneath it, because like you're playing a self-aware robot, but it's you as a human being. So even like the
Right.
premise, the argument that it's sort of like, that's it's self, like the entire structure refutes itself,
Mhm.
because the formula that they've laid out, and again, it's a piece of fiction and etc., but like requires human mastery, like
Mhm.
a human to be sort of sitting at the wheel.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that's the other instance that this game, like I said, it steps on its own
Yep.
toes. It's this idea of, you know, um, it makes the entire thing that, there's the character. I don't know if you probably got too much from her with how far you played Nate, but there's a character named Alexandria Drennan. and she's basically the person that came up with the entire system.
She's the one
right?
that
She
does the
set it up.
voice logs, right?
Mhm.
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
She's the most common person that you hear. And it makes everything she did from a biblical standpoint, right? Everything that they were doing in that entire time that they were setting up this entire process by putting in the logs and things like that, or the the bits of philosophy, so that the AI would have bits of humanity, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create a new race of humans, right? That are not uh, uh, like a bio life form, but mechanical, and they're basically like robots, but with quote unquote sentience. And that's the thing is, seeing it happen, it's almost comical. Especially, I don't expect you to play the second game, Nate, but maybe you will, Josh.
Okay.
It is the idea of this game fully realized,
Okay.
right? So like, it takes place in the future, and I don't think I'm spoiling too much because you already know the ending of this
Right.
game. There are tons of quote unquote humans. That's what they call themselves. There's an entire society of they're all living together, and they have unique personalities, and they don't feel robotic. They feel like, they joke around, and I mean, from an entertainment standpoint and things like that, like, it's great. It's the most cinematic puzzle game that I've ever played. It all takes place in first person, and it's really it's like the first game, but a blockbuster.
Okay.
There's action, there's even some open world elements.
Oh, wow.
But it's when you take that entire premise of, okay, we're going to create a new human race, and they're all going to be robots, and they're all going to be sentient. Knowing what I know about, and what I think everybody intuitively knows about consciousness, right? We know consciousness when we see it. I think people that say they see it in AI or whatever else, I think that is a self-deception. I don't think people actually, if they sit down and think about it, I think there's something about humanity to where we can see, okay, there's something different about me that is not replicated in a machine. It just can't be. And so you have that, not only this game, but especially the second game, it almost makes it a joke because they have all these machines talking to each other, but there's nobody there to actually be conscious of these things happening in reality, right? I mean, obviously in the fiction of the story, you can suspend disbelief. And if you do decide to play it, I suggest you do that, because it is entertaining from that standpoint, and it is really fun. But again, it's all futile, right? I mean, what's the purpose? Why do that?
Right. We all kind of reckon, and I'm going to compare it to a few movies here, so sorry for getting off this medium for just a second. But we all recognize that the movie Her is sad at its core, right? Like it's that's there. I think also there was a bit of not poisoning the well entirely, but I was listening to a review of a movie. It might still be out in theaters as of this recording, but there was a movie that came out recently within the past few months called Companion, which is this horror movie about this girl whose boyfriend like locks her up and like does like barely gives her any food and beats her and all this stuff. Like it's terrible. We'll come to find out the big twist is that, oh, she's a robot. And so he purchased her. And so like she is his property because she's a robot. And I was listening to two reviewers talk about this, and one of whom actually liked the movie, and the other one was like, "No, it's terrible because they use a human actress. Like it's not actually a robot. Like yes, like they have you believe that this person, because it's from her perspective, they grant their premise of this is really horrible to do to a human being by presenting her as a human being, not by telling you that it's a robot and having like robotic features, but it's actually an actress playing this, and I think this game does a similar thing like you were talking about, Nate, in that now should humans act that way towards robots? I would say no, because I think there's something demeaning in that, even if you do have
Well,
dominion over something. But anyways,
that's
that's
a
all.
that's kind of like, like, why do we feel so strongly about men and women that abuse animals?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Like,
I still want to say thank you to, my AI assistants, not even for their sake, because I don't think there's any consciousness there, but for my own sake, because I don't want to treat something like that. I still want to be polite, even when no one's watching. Does that make sense? That's just me. You could disagree. That's fine.
dude, you're
Um,
you're way more consistent there than I
I
would
mean,
be.
there are times when
Yeah.
I berate it, but not very often, because I don't want that in me. I
Yeah.
don't want to
No.
act like that. So it's purely it's a self-serving thing. But that's anyways. Anyway, that's a kind of a side conversation. But I agree. That was the thing that kind of frustrated me after I finished the game. As I looked back at it, that was kind of my biggest point of contention, is that they concede their answer by having you play a robot. Like, can a robot be human? Is the whole question of the game. Well, they it is automatically yes, because you as a human are playing it. It's just like you said, Nate. And so it kind of it ruins that aspect of it, of that question. That said, I actually, if we could go back to kind of, we were talking philosophy before the spoilers, and I wanted to wait till afterwards. I don't think that this game actually presents a coherent philosophy about anything. I think it just tries to poke holes in the answers that you give it, which
Well,
I actually think is a good thing. I think it's okay to be really hard on it, on philosophical concepts. The only thing was that, because it's kind of multiple choice, you can't ever actually choose the right answers. Like, you can't bring up the Imago Dei. You can't give a biblical worldview answer, and that's a limitation of it being a video game. But I did find it a little frustrating. But I wasn't overall, like, I didn't think that there were bad philosophical messages, because I don't think it actually presents any. I think it simply pokes holes on the ones that
I
you
don't
try
I
and
don't think
present.
it really asks any like, and again, I didn't play the entirety of the game, but like, even what I saw, they weren't like meaningful questions. They're like poking at it a little bit, but it's like,
Hmm.
it's not like, they weren't that rigorous. Like,
Hmm.
I guess, and maybe this is, but it's like, I felt like you could read sort of where, like, where they were leaning. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
it's like they're operating out of a humanist, fundamentalist, or a fundamentally humanist materialist position, and
For sure.
it's a weak position, because like, even it's like, it's like they're talking about like the preservation, like, because part of the story is like, the reason that they're doing this thing is because there's a virus that's wiping out humanity,
Hmm.
right? Why is
Yeah.
humanity worth preserving? Like,
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
they don't even offer like a good, like, why do you need to, and again, this is like, there's like, I'm not trying to like pull this game apart, but it's like,
No, no.
anytime I see this kind of stuff, it's like, it's like, well, we have to preserve some record of humanity, and
Mhm.
it's kind of like, why? Well, because we were here. And it's like, like, I just kind of like make fart noises at that. You know what I'm
Sure.
saying?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, come on. Um, so I don't like, and I'm not trying to be too hard on it, but it's just like one of those things where, like, it has that kind of like Rob Bell kind of thing, where it's like, it it sounds kind of like okay or good, because it's like vague, and it's like kind of like heady. It's like that pseudo intellectualist like headiness,
Mhm.
but it's not really that interesting. It's not really that like challenging. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's just me. Like, maybe like, I don't know. I just wasn't that impressed with like the premise that I
Mhm.
was just like, I was like, this isn't that, and that's the thing is like it could have. And you even talked about like interacting like the with the library system and sort of like the qualifications for like personhood or consciousness. And it's like
Yeah.
even those conversations, it's just like yeah, because just by the nature of the scripting, it's not really a robust conversation about any of that
Right.
stuff. It just
Hmm.
kind of like for like sort of like takes a couple jabs at you and it tells
Hmm.
you, oh, you're incoherent. And I'm like,
Hmm.
well, I'm working. You gave me the option of 4 answers and none of them were good. Like,
Right.
so I'm just like,
Right.
I picked the least incoherent out of these. And now you're going to be like, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it's like,
Hmm.
this isn't how I would actually answer any of this. But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
and again, I'm
Yeah.
not trying to like get too whatever about it.
Right, right. It's frustrating in the moment, but it is like, hey, that's just a limitation of a video
That's just
game.
yeah, it's just
Um,
yeah.
and you've already brought up Shin Megami Tensei, but I've had that feeling multiple times with those games where they're asking you, what upon what principle are you going to rebuild the world? And it's like, oh, well, all of these are flawed principles, like
It's like
none of them.
they're all bad.
All of the gods that you choose to serve are wicked, so
Yeah.
take your pick kind of a thing. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to follow Lucifer in the game because he's Lucifer. But that said, yeah, so I've seen those things before in other games. I suppose, just talking this out, I guess the reason that I'm not as I don't think the game was you've said it a few times, kind of high on its own supply, is because when it comes down to it, after you finish the game, even though it's not a huge reveal, like it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's where I saw it going. I think what it did for me is that it wrapped it up and it said, oh, this is just a story. Like, it's not meant to be something that will change your life forever. It's not meant to present something. Whereas I think something like The Outer Wilds does that. I think The Outer Wilds is actually trying to say something about the nature of your own.
Existence. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Whereas this game, I did not feel that it was trying to reach out of the screen and tell you something. I think it was just trying to tell its own story. And its own story is, oh, we created an AI that's like a human. Which
Yeah.
again, I still agree that it steps on its toes by granting its own premise, by having you control it. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's trying to be like, oh, we're so smart, because it's just telling its own story.
No. Yeah, but I think at the other sort of as a bit of a way to poke back at some of that is
Hmm.
that um it's like, oh well, it's just a story. Like that's like kind of like a convenient retreat and for them. Well, it's like, oh, we're just telling a story. It's like, yeah, but the questions you're asking have like real ramifications. It's kind of like and 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 maybe that's what my problem is that it's like they go too far but not far enough. Does that make sense? It's like they sort of go down this road like too far without like it's like and they just should have really like leaned into it and like stuck to their guns and it's like kind of like but they didn't like they put their foot on the gas just enough to like take it to a point. I'm
Well, see, here's the issue I have with that, and Spike, I'd love to hear your opinion on this as well. Is I think that the pacing was completely destroyed because you missed out on a lot of the conversations where when you're pulling from the library system, when you're talking to the serpent, everything is falling apart towards the end of the game. Like, you're seeing all the cracks in everyone. Like, all the humans are either despairing of life, or they're holding on to what they have, or they're recognizing, oh, actually, relationships are probably the most important part of my life anyway. So all the philosophical blustering is kind of cracking and crumbling and like, okay, we're not really that smart. It really comes down to some of these few basic things are worth living. And even same with the Elohim character, with the serpent character, like that progression. I think it's actually really well paced, because you go to at least for me it was, because whenever you go to a new area, you see the terminal, oh, the serpent wants to talk to you. So you have a conversation with him, you learn some more information, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I think because of that pacing, it just kind of eased me into like, okay, this isn't trying to say something, like it's asking questions, it's poking holes, and that's it. It's not presenting anything that I find
But that's
abhorrent.
I guess I kind of like it's kind of like the Joker movie syndrome, and I haven't watched it.
Mhm.
It's just like anytime you have media that does that, though, you're gonna have people who just they're gonna take it the wrong way.
For sure. Yep. I
And
agree.
there's I
That's
think,
dangerous. Yeah.
and that's well, and it's like, but it's also kind of a cowardice, because it's like just embrace it, just lean into it, just like have the stones to actually like have something to say. And so many times there's sort of this retreat, well, well, it's just a game, it's just a movie, it's just a piece of like, and it's like, but it's not. You know, and that's kind of what it's like. It, in one sense, yes, it is just a movie, it is just a game, it is just a book, it is just whatever, a story. But it's also not, like, you know, and it's like not every story is worth telling. And I guess, like I said, and we have to, yeah, I have to throw like a big fat asterisk over like everything I'm saying here and all the critiques I'm leveling, because I kind of dipped out because like I didn't find the loop compelling enough to keep going, right?
Mhm.
But it just feels like, and maybe this is like just more of a personal thing where it's like, just lean into it, like really wrestle with this stuff, or just leave it alone. Like, but because it does sort of like play with some of these questions, and even sort of like the ending of the game where it goes, I'm just like, I don't know. It just kind of leaves. And again, I haven't finished I haven't cleaned my plate, right? But it
Mhm.
does leave a little bit of a like kind of a bad taste where I'm like, it just feels like, yeah, like they're just, yeah. Anyways,
Yeah.
but I, again, I just have to throw like a big old like asterisk or sort of like disclaimer saying like, hey, I can't speak to that stuff because I haven't played, you know, past,
Sure.
I haven't played chapter C or the C level or whatever. So it's like, but I just, you know, but even there, what you're telling me is like the things are kind of falling apart, and like the philosophy, it's like, well, duh, because
Mhm.
you don't have great answers for any of this stuff, and it's just
Mhm.
like, you know, anyways. But yeah, Nate, other Nate, alternate, what we've been sort of like running our gums over here, and
Yeah, it's. I mean, I I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I do think, kind of to reiterate, the seeing everything fall apart, I think does kind of make it more cohesive as a story. Um, as far as what they're saying or what they're not saying, yeah, they are kind of leaving it out there. It's almost like the makers of the game found a thread that I think everybody kind of has this, you know, this thought of consciousness, people that share our worldview and people that don't, what is consciousness? Everybody tends to think about this, especially now with AI coming up. And there was part of me that thinks, I wish that when they started to pull on that thread, they just would have pulled on it a little harder,
Mhm.
right?
yeah,
I think by doing so, you would have come to some good conclusions if you would have just sat and wrestled with some of these issues a little bit more, as far as consciousness, as far as choice and things like that. I think anybody who is thorough in doing that, and who doesn't have a predisposition against you know uh, the God of the Bible and things like that. You look at C.S. Lewis's life story and take it for I don't agree with Lewis on several things, but the logically, that's one thing I can relate to is his take it the mere Christianity method of, if you just take a step back and follow nature the way we see it. Romans 1 being a good example of, you can see the evidence for God. And I think consciousness is another way of doing that. And I think maybe that's why they didn't pull so hard on that thread is they didn't want to get to that conclusion, because I don't see how you can end up with any other conclusion if you follow that thread to its end. And so I do think that's a fair criticism. If you're going to tackle it, go all out, because if they would have, I think we would have had a completely different outlook from this game. But again, with them not doing it, I do feel like it is more in, hey, this is just a story. Here's what's, and the second game 1000% reinforces that idea of, hey, this is just a fancy sci-fi story.
It's just a set piece.
And
yeah.
Right. And so, on the one hand, it's kind of a shame that it did that. On the other hand, the second game is a lot of fun. I liked it, but it's got a lot of lasers. So I wouldn't, if you didn't like the first one, I wouldn't play the second one.
Like I said, and I'm not trying to I have to talk about it's like, I have to speak my truth, and it's like, I'm just telling where it just kind of fell apart for me. It was just that frankly, I was like, oh yeah. But again, I have to throw the asterisk out there where it's like,
sure,
I didn't finish it. But yeah, so that's, those are, that's just kind of how it fell out for me, or it's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I'm starting to kind of
well, feeling and thinking and all that. I think we've done a lot of that already. I was going to say this evening. I guess it's this morning. Is what I'll say. So I think that just about exhausts my thoughts on the game. I think this has been a great discussion. Like I said, I enjoyed the game, and I enjoy talking about these things as well. And the different impressions of the game, and both the frustrations that I had with the game, I don't even know if it's narratively, but it's, just the way that the game was framed, and the decisions that were made, or the nature of it being a video game. So it's hard to tackle these things, granting all those things. But I don't have anything else necessarily to hit with the game. But do you guys have any final thoughts?
You go ahead, Nate.
I think we hit all my notes. I think we covered all the main points I was hoping to hit. So I enjoyed talking about it. I appreciate the chance to jump on. Like I said, I didn't pick this because it was my favorite.
Yeah.
I picked it because I felt like it was the best I could think of as far as having a discussion over.
Yeah.
So
that's fantastic.
It's definitely it's a good talk piece where it's it's
for sure
talking it's a good conversation piece, or sort of I just, like I said, I where I ended up landing is just kind of whereas I think both of you would kind of sort of say play it, I was pretty dissatisfied with it, and so it's I would just I think for what I would say, if your sensibilities are more like mine, listener, watcher, audience member, whatever, you might be best served by just avoiding this. It's not, but
it's not everyone's cup of tea.
It's not everyone's bottle of kombucha.
Fermented tea. Anyways, all right. Well, yeah, I've had a great time. I think this was a good conversation on this game. But of course, you listener, watcher, whoever you are, as you're listening to me talking, if you have any thoughts, anything we didn't cover, hey, hit us up. There's tons of ways you can do that. You can comment on this YouTube video. You can reach out. Tons of ways on our link tree. It's linktree.com/the backlog breakdown. You can find us all over the internet, and we'd love to hear from you. But now that we're done discussing the game, we do have some final forms before we sign off for the evening. And in one of those forms comes in the form of a question. And that question is, what is your question? What is your question? So this is the part of the show where we gather up some questions that have been asked and we answer those questions, or at least attempt to, live on air. Well, I mean, I guess this isn't live when you're listening to it, but it's live when I'm recording it, so it's live.
Yeah, it's live when we start dealing with it.
Until
Wait, you guys are recording this? Oh man.
until there's dead air, I guess we're still alive. So as we've done for the past couple of months now, we have said that we're going to come to the table with one of these questions. I only see a couple questions in Discord, so I'm going to pull one of them, and that one is this one. This comes from Porcho. He always asks so many questions. I'm not going to try and do an Aussie accent, but he asks, what was the last game that you played that made you feel like it was a total waste of time? Now, I'll be honest. I try and be pretty intentional with my game time. So this one was a hard one for me. It's particular to the words that he used, was a total waste of time, because there are some games where I feel like, yeah, I didn't really like that very much. I actually had to go back to GG and go through just the games that I've played. And again, it's pretty difficult. Like in terms of just like the latest one, or the one that I'm closest in time to, would probably be a game that we just can't help but mention every single episode. Would be something like Death Stranding, which I totally get. Oh no, why did you just say that? I'm saying that's like the closest, because I generally enjoy the game. Like, I generally look into games that I play before I play them, and so I generally enjoy them. But in terms of like years ago, as I'm looking through this list, I'm like, oh yeah, that one's just okay. That one's just okay. I wouldn't classify these as like wastes of time. But the one that I came upon that I remember just abandoning, but again, this was probably like 2019, 2020, was it was a PC game. It was a one of those breakout style games called Wizorb. You're a wizard and you're hitting an orb around.
You got an orb?
Yeah, and
Did you ponder your orb?
No, I'm not sure what that is.
You don't know that reference?
I don't know what that reference is.
Google it.
I didn't.
I'm not gonna educate you.
Okay.
You ignorant.
We'll see, if I were to stop and do that, it would probably be a waste of time. But this game, Wizorb, I felt like it was a waste of my time because it was extremely difficult and I lost a lot of progress when I died. So I did not continue with it very long. So that's my answer. It's not the most riveting answer, but that's my answer. What do you guys, what was the last game that you played that you felt like was a total waste of time?
I just pulled up my abandoned list. You know what? I'm just gonna say straight up, it's a toss up between. Well, no, it's not even a toss up. Genshin Impact. I played that for a little bit.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Just nothing. I didn't really think it was, like, looking back on it, I didn't really think the gameplay was that interesting. It was just like, yeah, it's like the 20 hours or whatever I put into it. It's like, yeah, that would have been better served doing just about almost anything else. So
that checks out, because you didn't care as much for Breath of the Wild, right? And that's kind of the framework that they were
Yeah,
working with,
it's
if
yeah
I remember right.
the appeal. Well, what it was like. Frankly, I think Genshin Impact is a much less interesting Breath of the Wild. I think Breath of the Wild is conceptually like fine. I just think there are a few areas where I disagree with their choices and execution.
Okay.
So, but
Yeah.
Genshin Impact is like it's a gotcha game. It's yeah, and it's yeah. It's in hindsight. I'm like, yeah, kind of wish I never would. It's like it's not like, oh, I hate this. It's disgusting. It's like, but it didn't move the needle for anything. It was just like it's like meh.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's but and you talked about like I know we each bring our own question, but actually that I looked at that one too. So I think Porcho is
Oh,
just the
that was
the
our
big
question.
winner, and that's
There you go.
Porcho's our big winner.
Way to go, Porcho. You win.
Are you sure you guys aren't just doing this to troll me? Because this is the
Listen,
episode that I'm
you
on,
have
and
I know
I'm
that
just
you
gonna.
have your blood feud with Porcho, but it's okay. It's okay. It's
Well,
not
here, okay,
intentional.
here, Spike, I'll throw you a bone because that was the only other question in our Discord was actually your question. And in your question was, in your opinion, what place, if any, do idle games have in the industry? And I'll be honest with you, I didn't know what an idle game was until this episode. So
Interesting.
none
Yeah.
for me. No, in terms of the industry, I am a horrible. Nate just had his full 2.5 hour podcast on the state of the industry. I am a horrible industry man. I like what I like, and it's not what industry people like. What the masses. I mean,
Well, that's
sometimes
not
it
always
overlaps,
true.
but
Like you like Breath of the Wild. The industry loved
yes,
Breath of the Wild.
yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
So you like Super Mario Wonder. The industry
Mhm.
loves Super Mario Wonder.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So what place in the industry do idle games have, Nate?
I mean, not much. They're they're kind of like MTX farms, like because a lot of idle games, and maybe not the one that Spike is playing, but a lot of idle games do have like sort of like these timers, and so like when you're playing it, like there are a certain amount of actions, and every time you do those actions, like you can actually like get in and make things happen, and so you can put real money into some of these things to accelerate or refresh or get more like
Mm.
in-game resources. So I would just sort of say like they're probably just like low effort like MTX farms.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'd say like 90% of them are just malicious and just trying to farm money.
Yikes.
And thankfully, the ones that I've seen on Steam, like there's apparently that's what prompted the question was like I didn't know that standalone games existed in the idle genre that didn't have tons and tons of or any microtransactions whatsoever, right? So the ones that Charles mentioned in his list on GG, I don't think any of those have microtransactions.
Gotcha.
You just buy it and let it do its thing.
Nice.
But again, even though I've kind of enjoyed watching this little thing, it's like I said before, it's like watching an aquarium.
Sure.
It's not really doing a whole lot. You're just kind of watching the colors. But even though that's the case, just the idea in my head of a game that you don't play, it almost makes me frustrated. I don't like it as a concept, but hey, here I am trying it out.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
I'm not a fan of idolatry either. Anyways.
Dollar Tree, you can get some really good stuff there. I don't know if you guys have those out there.
Oh, yeah.
But
oh, yes. Midwest. There are a bunch of them out here.
I'm going to go commit ritual suicide now. Thank you.
Harry Carey. Okay, final thought actually on the first question, on Porcho's question of the games that were a total waste of time. I do want to just give a little bit of a shout out to redeemed Ronin in our Discord because he said the original God of War. And actually, I would put that in that category as well. It was just years and years ago that I tried to play that game. I own like the first 3 on old systems. And before I played any of them, and I tried playing the first one, and I largely agree with his assessment that it's a lot of kind of press X to win.
Yeah.
In addition to that, it's very edgelord. Oh no, he's in bed with multiple Medusa women. Isn't he just so cool? Which they did away with the 2018 version, which I enjoyed. So I agree that one, maybe the hour or whatever I put into it, it did feel like a waste of time.
Yeah.
So shout out to him. And speaking of shout outs, before we head out for the morning, we do have some shout outs that we want to just shout out to our community. SPyKe, thank you so much for coming on. You're a great part of this community, both on
Thanks
and
for
off
having me.
camera. Yeah, man. Anytime, dude. I wanted to shout out, and I know I do this a lot, but I think in particular, remember like 2.5 hours ago when we started this episode, we all kind of talked about some health issues that we or our family had been experiencing. I believe that all 3 of us, yes, had been putting this information as well in our Discord channel, the Onwards and Upwards channel, where we are praying for one another when we face some difficult times. And sometimes, it's just praise and updates and things like that. But I'm very appreciative for everyone who participates in that channel. And so shout out to you guys who are praying for each other. That it's just so cool that we could have a place like that where even if it's slightly a parasocial relationship, we still get to pray for one another like the brothers in Christ that we are. I was going to say brothers and sisters, but I don't think we have any females in our Discord. So not to discourage any, but just that currently it's a bunch of brothers, band of brothers. There we go.
As far
So that's
as
my
we
shout out.
know, as far as we know,
That's true.
there might be some ladies like hanging out in there or something.
Yeah.
I find that highly unlikely, but I'm not saying it's completely outside of the realm of possibility. I did not come here with a shout out tonight.
You were not prepared.
I was not prepared for that one. Like I dropped the ball. So you know what? And he gets a lot of them, but I just want to shout out our boy Jono again. Like he kind of, I think every community benefits from having somebody. You know what? Another one in our community who's good for this too is Big Chill, Alex Castellanos. Like thoughtful guys who offer like real answers, like or have something to say and not just like listen. I love being a goofy meme lord, and sort of like
It's fun.
Duncan and like I love doing the goofs because they're fun. But and I was just thinking about this. Like Jono's really always good for like some meaningful contributions and thoughtful responses. So is Alex, and I just would like to shout those guys out. In not that, but Alex responded. To he gave like feedback to the brain trust bite sized, and and it's really again he has something meaningful to say, and that's cool. Like,
yeah,
I always like that. To me, is the win. So it's like when there's something interesting kind of being like kicked off, and like there's conversations happening, and those guys they bring some good heat, and so well done, Alex. Well done, Jono.
Yeah.
Keep it up, boys.
Appreciate you guys. Shout outs to you guys. Now, we've given our shout outs, and I've already mentioned there's lots of ways you can contact us, check out the link tree for that. But before we head out, Spike, is there anything that you want to put on our listeners' radar? Anything that you are doing, or any way that, I don't know,
Speak
you
now
wanna
or
tell
forever
people
hold
about?
your pee.
Yeah.
Man, not a whole lot right now. It's been about 1 year since my music project that I
Yeah.
did, which, feel free to go back and listen to that.
Sweet.
There's links to it in the Discord, I think. But yeah, Hopeless Project. It was gospel in the form of mostly instrumental music, as weird as that sounds. But nothing else really since then. Been busy being a dad, so just on Discord, and that's about it. So
Awesome, man. Well, I'll make sure that the links for that are in the show notes and descriptions and all that stuff for the podcast as well, so people can go check that out. Well, once again, do want to say thank you for taking
Yeah, dude.
your entire evening and most of your morning to be with us.
Even if I didn't like the game, I appreciate the conversation. And again, it's not like I hated it. It's just I didn't like it all that much either. It was just like I'm kind
Even
of
if I
like
didn't like it, I do like you.
I do like you, yeah, and appreciate you hopping on, man. Appreciate your patronage and your friendship. So, dude,
Yeah.
glad to have dudes
appreciate it.
like you in
Yeah.
the community, and somebody's got to keep Portia on his toes. So.
Oh yeah. I was worried he was going to try to invade, and I heard that he had some kind of message he left for me that
Did he have some
that
thoughts
might.
that he was going to give? What?
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, some.
It's Porcho
Oh.
here.
What?
I'm definitely the real Porcho and not a fake robot voice. See? Watch. Good eye, mate. Hello, governor. Cheerio. Anyways, I just dropped in this episode to share a little bit of what has been on my mind lately. Namely, that SPyKe is so cool and I wish I could be like him when I grow up. Also, Metal Gear
wow.
Solid 2 is clearly the best Metal Gear Solid game. Well, that's about all I have for now. I have to go put a kangaroo on the Barbie. Farewell.
Well, man, I don't know what to
Wow.
say. That hit me right here.
Beautiful.
That was
I'm just
uncanny.
that was amazing. Fortunately, I misunderstood you. I'm very I'm gonna hijack your shout outs. My shout out goes to Porcho. He's not so bad after all. So
That's
man,
amazing.
what a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Porcho is he's a real one. He's a G.
Yeah. And I could totally tell that was human.
Yeah.
There's no question about the consciousness or the sentience of that recording.
No,
That was
there-
Absolutely.
Australian human.
Yeah,
It was
100%.
amazing.
All right, that's enough. But okay, boys, we did. Oddly enough, that did kind of sound like Porcho, a lot like Porcho, to me. Not like just tonally.
I mean, Porcho sounds like Porcho. I don't know what you're
Inferring.
surprised by. I mean,
Okay, all right. Yeah, there's you guys just aren't gonna let the bit die. So that being said, boys, we've done the things. We chopped it up, we chewed it up, and hopefully, we kickstarted some interesting conversations. So that being said, Josh, we've done the things. And
Mhm.
until next time, what should they do?
Guys, keep beating down your backlogs and we'll keep breaking down the benefits. That's what we'll keep doing.
Wah, wah, wah.
Bye.